Chapter 7:20, The Descendant of the Militant Warrior. Chapter 7:20, The Descendant of the Militant Warrior. Is this the demon god tribe? Jian Wushuang looked around as he thought back to how he met Gu Yang, who then carried him back to the tribe. We're the 8th tribe. I'm an elder of 8th tribe, and you can call me Elder Ing. Elder Ing looked at him. You were badly hurt, so I asked Jiu to give you a drop of essence blood. With that, you should be mostly healed now. Just then, the extremely ferocious bug, with many tentacles, on her arm raised its head and looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang looked back at it. Although he didn't know how precious its essence blood was, he was well aware of how severe his injury was. Under normal circumstances, even if he had used a general elixir or treasure, it would have been impossible for him to recover without half a month. But that drop of essence blood from the bug had almost completely healed him in a very short time. Thank you, said Jian Wushuang. We're of the same clan, so you don't need to be so polite. Elder Ing smiled and continued, By the way, I heard from Gu Yang that your name is Jian Wushuang. Which tribe are you from? Tribe. Jian Wushuang slightly narrowed his eyes, then shook his head and said, I'm not from any of the tribes. He didn't intend to continue lying. Previously, in the outer layer, he could leave immediately if he needed to, so he wasn't afraid of what would happen if the demon gods investigated his identity. But now he was inside a house that belonged to the demon god clan. He was in one of the demon god clan's tribes. At this moment, if he continued lying to Elder Ing and said that he was from 7th tribe or one of the other tribes, then it would be unwise. Not from a tribe. Elder Ing cocked her brows. Then you must be related to one of those militant warriors who wander around, constantly putting their lives on the line. Militant warriors? Jian Wushuang was curious, but he remained unmoved on the surface. Our ancient god clan is innately militant and possesses an enormous battle intent due to the instincts passed down from their ancestor, the ancient god. Elder Ing said, but ever since our ancestor disappeared, we have been living here and have very little contact with the outside worlds. So there aren't many battles. Even when there is a battle, it is only a contest between clansmen. Some of the clansmen can't stand it, so they leave the tribes and enter the boundless wasteland on the other end of the world to fight against the fiercely violent wild beasts. Some of them die in the intense battles with the wild beasts, while some of them survive and continue wandering the line between life and death. As time goes by, most of these clansmen should have died. There ought to be very few clansmen who are still fighting with wild beasts in the boundless wasteland. We call these people militant warriors, and you should be a descendant of them. Oh, Jian Wushuang understood now. These militant warriors left their homeland and tribes, but they still possess our great ancestors' bloodline and are still clansmen of our ancient god clan, so you are as well. Elder Ing looked at Jian Wushuang while smiling and said, Since you're already here, you can stay in our tribe for a while. Also, I don't think you have gone through the demon god baptism before. Have you? No. Jian Wushuang shook his head slightly. Our tribes will collectively perform a demon god baptism every once in a while. At that time, the clansmen of our tribes who have reached the baptism requirements will have their ancient god bloodline awakened through the baptism. If you're strong enough, you can come with us. After all, only when you awaken the ancient god bloodline can you truly be counted as the offspring of the ancient god, said Elder Ing. What are the requirements for baptism? Jian Wushuang couldn't help asking. Under normal circumstances, you only need to be an adult. Of course, those clansmen who have an extremely pure soul aura and lineage can awaken their bloodline in advance. And your lineage definitely meets the requirements, said Elder Ing. Oh, Jian Wushuang nodded slightly and asked, "How long will it be before the next baptism?" "There's an adult baptism every year, so the next baptism will be very soon," Eldering said and smiled. Jian Wushuang nodded. After that, he asked some more questions which were simple common sense to the clansmen who had lived in the tribes. Eldering answered his questions patiently. Jian Wushuang had also asked Guqiong some questions before, so he already had some knowledge of the ancient god clan that was living here. At the same time, he also gained a new understanding of the Eternal Zone. It wasn't just the ancient god clan. Wild beasts also lived in the Eternal Zone. Those wild beasts lived in the boundless wasteland at the other end of the world, occupying half of the territory, while the ancient god clan occupied the other half. The holy place of the ancient god clan covered a vast territory in the very center of the Eternal Zone. However, ever since their ancestor, the ancient god, disappeared, the holy place had been completely sealed, and no one had been able to even set foot in it. The ancient god clan had never left the Eternal Zone, even after so many years. Because of the ancient god bloodline, the ancient god clansmen became ancient gods through baptism after they became adults, but a small portion of them had a very thin bloodline, so they couldn't awaken their own bloodline no matter how hard they tried. Only when their bloodline was really awakened could they be considered as ancient gods. Even so, there were strong and weak ancient gods. Unlike the human experts in the eternal world, the ancient gods were not divided into the skyscraping realm, divine realm, eternal realm, and so on. Their realm was determined by the number of quadrangular stars on their chest. The moment their bloodline was awakened, quadrangular stars would naturally condense on their chests. If there was one star, they would be a one-star ancient god. A one-star ancient god was equal to a human who was in the divine realm. If they condensed 2 stars, they would be a 2-star ancient god, which was equal to the eternal realm for human beings. If they condensed 3 stars, they would be the same as a supreme Tao master among the humans. There were 10 tribes and millions of people in the ancient god clan. Up till now, 1-star ancient gods at least occupied more than 90% of the population, and there were also quite a few 2-star ancient gods. Generally, the number of 2-star ancient gods in each tribe exceeded 3 figures. In other words, there were at least 100 2-star ancient gods that were comparable to the eternal realm for human beings. As for 3-star ancient gods, Eldering did not say much about them, but Jian Wushuang could roughly guess that there was more than one 3-star ancient god in the ancient god clan. After knowing this, even Jian Wushuang couldn't help being shocked by the awesomeness of the ancient god clan. 99% of the 10,000 clansmen already had their bloodline awakened. Once their bloodline was awakened, even the weakest clansman was a 1-star copper-armored ancient god who could compete with an advanced divine realm expert. There were more than 100 2-star ancient gods in each tribe. 10 tribes added up to over 1,000 2-star ancient gods, which could compete with eternal realm experts. Could all the eternal realm experts of all sects in the whole firmament territory even be able to reach half of this number? Chapter 7:21, The Strength of the Ancient God Clan. Chapter 7:21, The Strength of the Ancient God Clan. The Ancient God Clan is quite powerful. Jian Wushuang was greatly shocked in the heart. Given the overall strength of the Ancient God Clan, it wasn't an exaggeration to say they surpassed the entire firmament territory. However, because of certain reasons, the ancient god clansmen could not leave the Eternal Zone, so they had little contact with the outside world. It was only during those 10 days when the outsiders came down every 100 years that they would have any contact with experts and disciples from the firmament territory. The ancient god clan took advantage of this to hone some of the clansmen's abilities through contact with the outsiders. But they would only send the one-star ancient gods who had just awakened to the outer layer to fight with those divine realm disciples. As for the one-star ancient gods who had previously awakened and possessed great strength, they never took part in the fights. If it was not for the purpose of honing the clansmen's abilities, the firmament territory experts and disciples who had broken into the eternal zone wouldn't even be able to struggle against the ancient god clan. Kid, take your time and rest up. If you need something, you can look for Gu Yang, said Eldering before leaving. Jian Wushuang thanked her again. After seeing Eldering leave the stone house, he heaved a long sigh of relief. The 10-day deadline is already up, so it's very likely that the entrance to the Eternal Zone has completely closed, Jian Wushuang murmured as he felt a bit bitter. He was being chased, so he had no choice but to escape to the inner layer of the Eternal Zone. As a result, he was saved, but he missed the opportunity to return to the firmament territory. Once the 10-day deadline passed, the Eternal Zone would be sealed again. As for when it would reopen, it would be 100 years from now. According to what Eldering had just said, the clansmen of the ancient god clan had no way to leave the Eternal Zone. In other words, he couldn't leave anytime soon. If he wanted to leave, he would have to wait for 100 years. 100 years? Jian Wushuang couldn't help shaking his head as he smiled bitterly. However, he did not think much about it. After all, he was already here, so he could only act accordingly. According to Eldering, the purity of soul aura determines the concentration of the ancient god bloodline. My soul aura is very pure, and my ancient god bloodline is very thick, so I can at least become a silver-armored ancient god. Jian Wushuang mused as he drummed his fingers on the stone bed. He still didn't know if his soul aura had changed, or if he really possessed the bloodline of the ancient god clan. He was also not sure that he could successfully awaken the bloodline and become an ancient god after entering the baptismal pool, but it was obvious that he still wanted to try. I have to try. As long as I can awaken the ancient god bloodline and become an ancient god, even if it is just the lowest copper-armored ancient god, it is enough to enhance my strength. Jian Wushuang thought privately. However, the fly in the ointment was that once his bloodline was really awakened and he became a one-star ancient god, his own realm would have a breakthrough from the skyscraping realm to the divine realm. A breakthrough was a good thing, but Jian Wushuang did not want to break through so early because the skyscraping realm was the best stage for increasing his comprehension. Once he broke through and reached the divine realm, he might gain other abilities, but his speed of comprehension would definitely be greatly weakened. I don't need to hurry to do that. Since I'm forced to stay in the ancient god clan for 100 years, I'll have lots of opportunities to enter this baptismal pool. Before that, I can continue cultivating and wait to have the baptism in a dozen years, or even at the 99th year, Jian Wushuang thought. While sitting cross-legged on the bed, Jian Wushuang swallowed some elixirs and began to recover his spiritual power. His spiritual power was still exhausted at present. After half a day, 30% of the spiritual power inside Jian Wushuang's body had barely recovered. After sensing that his strength was slowly recovering, Jian Wushuang was slightly relieved, but there was a sharp light in the depths of his eyes that would make people tremble. Cloud Sea Asgard, Immortal Dynasty, Boundless Demon Sect. He clenched his hands. This trip to the Eternal Zone could be said to be the closest to death he had ever been. Thankfully, he was calm and decisive, which barely saved his life. In addition, he was forced to stay in the Eternal Zone, and he couldn't leave for the next 100 years. But the worst part was that Gu Qiong died because of him. All of this was caused by the three magnates. I have never provoked the three magnates, but they have spared no effort to kill me. Very well, you wait and see. Killing intent exploded in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He always drew a clear distinction between kindness and hatred. He wouldn't attack others unless others attacked him. Since the three magnates had provoked him, he would not be kind to them. Of course, he was trapped in the eternal zone and couldn't leave for now, so he wasn't a threat to them for the time being, but the situation would be different in 100 years. Time flew by, and 3 days had passed since Jian Wushuang was brought to the 8th tribe. After 3 days, Jian Wushuang's spiritual power had been completely restored. He even managed to create another slaughter body, since the previous one was killed by An Chao. As long as his 2 original bodies weren't both killed, the one which was killed could be recreated by the other. Jian Wushuang's state had returned to the peak once again. While sitting cross-legged on the bed, Jian Wushuang was wholeheartedly meditating on Tao when there was a loud noise from outside. Jian Wushuang's face changed slightly, and he opened his eyes. Then he walked out of the house. Immediately after walking outside, while standing in front of the door, he saw lots of clansmen gathered together in a vast open place, and 2 young men fight intensely at the center. Jian Wushuang knew one of the young men. He was Gulan, the son of the silver-armored ancient god, Guyang, who carried Jian Wushuang back to the tribe. Gulan had not reached adulthood yet, and still hadn't had his baptism to awaken his ancient god bloodline. The other young man who fought with him also hadn't awakened his bloodline. While watching the fierce fight between the 2 men, Jian Wushuang walked toward the crowd. The fierce fight was quickly over, and the winner was Gulan. "Ha! Who is not convinced? Feel free to come forward and fight with me." Gulan had an antagonistic expression as he looked around, and his loud, hearty laughter sounded throughout the open space. There were quite a few clansmen who also hadn't awakened their bloodline around him, but these people just looked at one another without the intention of fighting. Among the clansmen who hadn't awakened their bloodline and become real ancient gods, Gulan was obviously the strongest. Chapter 7:22, Challenging. Chapter 7:22, Challenging. What? No one has the courage. Seeing no one dare to stand out, Gulan had a larger smile. Then he noticed Jian Wushuang next to him, and his eyes immediately lit up. "Jian Wushuang." Gulan turned to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang raised his head in surprise. "I heard from Eldering that you're a descendant of the militant warriors." Gulan paused, and then continued. "I heard about the stories of the militant warriors long ago. They dared to break into the boundless wilds and fought with the wild's beasts. Because they constantly adventure on the edge of life and death, they are much stronger than the clansmen at the same level. I've always greatly admired them, but I have never been fortunate enough to meet any of them. Until I finally met you, a descendant of the militant warriors. You were injured at that time, so I could not challenge you, but you seem to have recovered. Do you have the courage to fight with me now?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang forced a smile. He just came here to watch the fierce battle, but he never expected that Gulan would challenge him directly. But Jian Wushuang understood that the clansmen were aggressive by nature. Even though they did not have any conflicts of interest, they often fought with each other. Since he was said to be a descendant of the militant warriors, it was normal for the members of the 8th tribe to challenge him. "How about it? Are you brave enough?" Gulan said, "Of course. If you want, I'll fight with you." Jian Wushuang's eyes became sharp. He also wanted to know the real strength of the ancient god clansmen. Hearing Jian Wushuang's answer, Gulan laughed, and the other clansmen immediately opened up a path for him. Jian Wushuang walked forward and stood in front of Gulan. "Jian Wushuang, be careful," Gulan reminded him. Then he suddenly stamped his feet heavily. Bang! The ground under his feet immediately cracked. Gulan turned into a phantom and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. He snorted and clenched his huge fist, releasing an explosive power. His punch seemed to be able to destroy a huge mountain. It caused an intense blast that carried terrifying power. However, Jian Wushuang did not dodge Gulan's punch. He stood there and also threw a pure punch, but he only exerted 70% of his strength because he was unclear Gulan's real strength. Even so, he had nearly reached the offensive power of a divine realm expert because of his cultivation method and strong body. The two huge fists quickly collided. Bang! With a muffled sound, Jian Wushuang felt that his right hand go numb and a pain passed along his arm. He was even knocked backward. Gulan hasn't experienced baptism, so he's not an ancient god yet. According to the levels of human warriors, he's just a skyscraping realm expert. How can he be so physically strong? Jian Wushuang felt it so incredible. He knew that the ancient god clansmen were best at physical strength. But he did not expect that Gulan would be so powerful before he became an ancient god and be much stronger than ordinary divine realm experts. Whoosh! Gulan approached Jian Wushuang again and punched with both fists this time. Bang! 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 Each punch rushed towards Jian Wushuang with a terrifying power. Jian Wushuang exerted himself to resist, but he was overpowered by Gulan in terms of physical strength, so he was forced to retreat. Ha! Jian Wushuang, you're just SOSO as a descendant of the militant warriors. I only used 80% of my power to defeat you. Gulan laughed. Jian Wushuang's face darkened. He suddenly turned his palm upside down, and a long sword appeared in his palm. It was not the Emperor's sword, though. It was just an ordinary one. Oh, are you going to use your weapon? Humph, it makes no difference, Gulan sneered. We'll see. Jian Wushuang smiled confidently. Gulan appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and released another violent punch towards him. However, Jian Wushuang did not punch back this time. Instead, he waved the long sword, causing an immaterial vortex to instantly appear. Gulan's fist landed on the vortex, but was continuously weakened by it. In the end, the power of his fist was completely dissipated. Gulan looked surprised. Before he could figure it out, Jian Wushuang swung the longsword casually once again. The sword light appeared to be slow, but it was so fast in Gulan's eyes, making him feel as if he could not dodge it. Gulan felt a little anxious and raised his fist to smash the sword light. Swoosh! He missed the sword light, and it continued forward, gliding over his shoulder and leaving a tiny sword scar. Damn it! Gulan's expression changed. He turned back and struck forward with his knee. However, Jian Wushuang dodged it easily and swept out with his longsword, causing another vortex to appear. The vortex surrounded Gulan and slammed him against the ground, but Gulan immediately struggled to stand up. One more time. Gulan shouted and put on a pair of divine-level red boxing gloves, which could enhance his offensive power. Jian Wushuang just stood there, swinging his longsword casually to resist Gulan's attacks, and leaving some scars on him. He's too slow and clumsy. His attack method is also too simple and predictable. He has nothing but brute force, Jian Wushuang thought, shaking his head. Gulan was physically strong, but weak in other aspects, especially in close combat. Perhaps because he had not experienced any life-and-death battles or mastered any skills. He was like a baby who could raise a heavy sword but was unable to display its full power. Jian Wushuang just waved his sword casually to resolve his attacks with ease and even teased him. Chapter 723, Gu Changfeng. Chapter 723, Gu Changfeng. Yes, he was teasing him. The clansmen around also discovered it. Jian Wushuang was teasing Gulan. He just stood there and did not move forward at all. Okay, that's enough, a man suddenly said. Gulan stopped attacking after hearing the voice, even though he was unwilling. Brother Feng, Gulan turned to face the man. Jian Wushuang also looked at him. This young man with a sturdy body and a handsome face was more than 2 meters tall, and he held a black spear in his hand. The other clansmen looked at him with a hint of worship. The young man directly came to Gulan and said in a low voice, I told you before that your attacks are too simple and that you should adventure in our tribe's underground palace more often. But you always believed that physical strength is more important. Now you're paying the price for it, right? Upon hearing this, Gulan's face flushed with embarrassment, but he could not refute his words. He was indeed defeated due to his lack of combat skills. The underground palace mentioned by the young man was an exclusive place for the clansmen to practice their combat skills. Humph! The young man snorted and turned to Jian Wushuang. A smile appeared on his face before he said, I'm Gu Changfeng, brother of Gulan. I just watched you fight with Gulan. You have exceptional swordsmanship and impressive fighting experience. You deserve your title as a descendant of the militant warriors. Could you please fight with me? Jian Wushuang raised his head and glanced at Gu Changfeng, but he did not directly assent. Jian Wushuang, Brother Feng is the strongest among the clansmen of the 8th tribe who haven't awakened their bloodline yet. His bloodline is also the purest. After he reaches adulthood and enters the baptismal pool, he can definitely become a silver-armored ancient god, or even a gold-armored ancient god, Gulan said. Oh, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He was very interested in what Gulan just said. Since the lifespan of the ancient gods was extremely long, it usually took a clansman more than 1,000 years to enter adulthood. Therefore, many of the clansmen in the 8th tribe had not awakened their bloodline yet. Since Gu Changfeng ranked first among them, he certainly possessed extraordinary strength. At the very least, he was much stronger than Gulan. Since that is so, please, Jian Wushuang said, be careful. Compared to Gulan, I'm stronger and have better combat skills. Gu Changfeng looked at Jian Wushuang with a trace of excitement in his eyes. He had only heard of the militant warriors, but never really met any of them. He knew that the militant warriors constantly fought with the wild beasts, so they were experienced and had far more excellent fighting skills than the ordinary clansmen. He was shocked by the swordsmanship Jian Wushuang had displayed just now. He looked forward to sparring with Jian Wushuang. I'll start. As Gu Changfeng shouted, he thrust forward with the black spear. The tip of the spear had a cold glow, even in the sunlight. It was silent like a poisonous snake striking out from a hole in the ground. So fast, Jian Wushuang was shocked. He was quite surprised by the speed of Gu Changfeng's spear stroke. Gu Changfeng was indeed much stronger than Gulan. Jian Wushuang dared not underestimate Gu Changfeng anymore. With a twist of his wrist, he directly swung the long sword toward the spear. When the sword and spear collided, Jian Wushuang immediately found that his sword, which should have had the edge, was pushed back by the spear, as Gu Changfeng's power was at least twice that of Gulan's full power. The spear's terrifying force directly knocked back Jian Wushuang's sword, and then continued to stab towards him. Jian Wushuang stepped backwards to dodge the spear. Gulan's eyes sparkled. Then he suddenly shifted the tip of the spear. It happened in the blink of an eye, which was completely caught Jian Wushuang off guard. Not bad. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. After the first round of fighting, he already realized that Gu Changfeng's ability in close combat was much stronger than many ancient sect disciples who were proficient in close combat. His spearmanship was also excellent. However, his comprehension of the Tao was slightly insufficient. But his incredible physical strength could completely make up for his shortcoming in Tao comprehension. It seems that I have to use a few tricks if I want to defeat him. Jian Wushuang smiled and casually struck the spear's body directly with his sword. The spear tip, which had been close to Jian Wushuang's body, was deflected to the side and missed its target. This Gu Changfeng was stunned and glanced at Jian Wushuang. He never expected that Jian Wushuang would be able to dodge his spear in this manner. Then Jian Wushuang began to exert the full ability of his swordsmanship. He hacked with his longsword faster and faster, with each sword stroke being simple and pure, but exquisite. Gu Changfeng was quickly surrounded by sword shadows. What? This swordsmanship? Gu Changfeng parried Jian Wushuang's sword strokes in haste, but he gradually failed to keep up as they became faster and faster. Gu Changfeng's face darkened. He exerted himself to stab his long spear forward. The might and incredible force even caused a burst of sound, causing Jian Wushuang to be shocked as he rushed backward in haste. Their combat stopped. Jian Wushuang, as a descendant of the militant warriors, your swordsmanship is really strong. Gu Changfeng sighed with admiration. Your spearmanship is also good. Jian Wushuang laughed, but he was quite surprised in his heart. He was definitely just as strong as a superior divine realm expert. Even though he did not use the power of his sword heart, he had used the full ability of his swordsmanship. Even with that, he still could not defeat Gu Changfeng. On the contrary, he was forced to retreat by the incredible force that Gu Changfeng released. That force, Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes slightly. That final blow that Gu Changfeng released was much stronger than many advanced divine realm experts when they exerted their secret skills. But Gu Changfeng had not awakened his bloodline and become a real ancient god yet. In other words, he was equivalent to a human skyscraping realm expert, but his strength was already so amazing. It was unbelievable. Chapter 724, Star River. Chapter 724, Star River. If I don't use the power of my sword heart, I'm much weaker than him in physical strength. But his fighting skills are inferior to mine, and his spearmanship is not as good as my swordsmanship. Either, Jian Wushuang thought. Both of them had their own advantages. Gu Changfeng was physically strong, while Jian Wushuang was excellent at fighting skills and swordsmanship. Jian Wushuang, your swordsmanship is very excellent, but your physical strength is lacking. I guess you haven't cultivated the ancient god's secret skill yet. Gu Changfeng asked. Ancient god's secret skill. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He had heard of the ancient god's secret skill, and that it could greatly enhance one's offensive power. It was the best among the secret skills which could enhance offensive power. 4 sect experts in the Firmament territory. There were 3 great opportunities in Eternal Zone, Demon God Essence Blood, Life and Death Baptismal Pool, and the Ancient God's Secret Skill. I knew it. Seeing Jian Wushuang shake his head, Gu Changfeng was not surprised. Through his fight with Jian Wushuang, he had already discovered that Jian Wushuang was physically weak. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang had not cultivated the ancient god's secret skill yet. Gu Changfeng, are you saying that you've cultivated the ancient god's secret skill? Jian Wushuang asked. He knew that those secret skills which could enhance one's offensive power were only accessible to divine realm experts in the Firmament territory. Since he was just a skyscraping realm expert, he was not qualified to cultivate them yet. This obviously made him weaker than divine realm experts in physical strength. If it were not for his sword heart, he would not be able to compete with those advanced or superior divine realm experts, no matter how strong his swordsmanship was. After hearing his words, Gu Changfeng blinked, and said, "Of course I've cultivated the ancient god's secret skill. Actually, everyone in our tribe, including the clansmen who have not awakened their bloodline, have cultivated the ancient god's secret skill. But the levels we have cultivated are different. For example, Gulan is cultivating level 2, which can enhance his physical strength 6 times. I'm cultivating level 3, which can directly enhance my physical strength 9 times. Really? Jian Wushuang opened his eyes wide in astonishment. No wonder Gu Changfeng and Gulan were so strong physically. Both of them had cultivated the ancient god's secret skill. The ancient god's secret skill could also enhance one's power was available to the clansmen who had not awakened their bloodline. Since they can cultivate it at their current level, what about me? Jian Wushuang thought. Let's go. I will take you to the place where we cultivate the ancient god's secret skill, Gu Changfeng said, and laughed. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded his head eagerly, his eyes full of excitement. Jian Wushuang followed Gu Changfeng to a hillside. The entire 8th tribe was located on a huge mountain. On this hillside, there was a large black temple. It looked ancient, and one could feel its mysteriousness even before entering. There were several clansmen standing guard in front of the temple. When Gu Changfeng and Jian Wushuang approached the front gate, the clansmen immediately turned and faced them. However, they could feel the pure spiritual aura of Jian Wushuang, so they glanced at him and then allowed him to enter. Except for the bright gems shining in the slightly dim temple, there were no other decorations. Jian Wushuang, look at the surrounding stone walls, Gu Changfeng said. Jian Wushuang immediately fixed his eyes upon them and was shocked. He realized there were ancient words carved all over the stone walls. What's this? Jian Wushuang frowned as he began to read the ancient words. This is Star River, the ancient god's secret skill I'm cultivating. You can start reading from there. Gu Changfeng pointed to a stone wall. Jian Wushuang looked up and found the first chapter of this secret skill. One of the 3 ancient god's secret skills, the Star River secret skill. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Even though he knew about the existence of the ancient god's secret skill, he did not expect there to be 3 types. The Star River secret skill that was carved on the stone walls in front of him was one of the 3 ancient god's secret skills that could greatly enhance one's offensive power. With a trace of doubt, Jian Wushuang continued to read it. The Star River secret skill was divided into many levels, level 1, level 2, and the 11th level. This stone wall recorded the 11 levels of the Star River secret skill. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang had been completely taken aback. 11 levels. There are 11 levels. How could that be possible? Jian Wushuang looked at it in shock as he was roared wildly in his heart. He realized that the Star River secret skill was the one which Vice Palace Master Ling you mentioned before. But Vice Palace Master Ling, you said that this secret skill was comprised of 5 levels, each of which could enhance one's offensive power 3 times. After he cultivated to level 5, his offensive power would be enhanced 15 times. This secret skill was absolutely heaven-defying. After all, the secret skills in the firmament territory, or even the eternal world, could only enhance one's offensive power 10 times at most. Because of this secret skill attracted experts and disciples from all the sects in the firmament territory. All the experts wanted to obtain more ancient god essence blood and cultivate the highest level of the secret skill so that they could enhance their offensive power 15 times, which would be a huge advantage. However, none of them knew that the secret skill they were crazy for actually consisted of 11 levels instead of 5. Each level could enhance one's offensive power 3 times. After someone cultivated the highest level, his offensive power would be enhanced 33 times. Terrifying. What a terrifying secret skill. Jian Wushuang was completely taken aback. The experts in the firmament territory were already quite eager to obtain the first 5 levels. If they knew that there were 11 levels, they would definitely go crazy. Oh no! Jian Wushuang's look suddenly changed. He stared at level 11 and read it through quickly. He was even more astonished. The 11th level. No, the Star River secret skill has more than 11 levels. The 11th level isn't the end of the Star River secret skill. Chapter 725, Level 3. Chapter 725, Level 3. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes wide while his heart was beating violently. He asked, Gu Changfeng, does the Star River secret skill consist of more than 11 levels? Yes, it does. Gu Changfeng nodded his head and said, the higher levels of Star River and the other 2 ancient gods' secret skills have higher requirements for the bloodline's purity and strength, so they are not carved in this temple. Only gold-armored ancient gods are qualified to cultivate them. What? Only gold-armored ancient gods are qualified? Jian Wushuang's expression changed slightly. Among the millions of ancient god clansmen, there were only about a dozen gold-armored ancient gods in each tribe. That was to say, only a few people were qualified to cultivate the other 2 ancient god secret skills and the higher levels of the Star River secret skill. Nevertheless, the 11 levels of the Star River secret skill are sufficient for ordinary clansmen. For example, many 1-star silver-armored ancient gods in our tribe can cultivate Level 9 of the Star River secret skill. At most, Gu Changfeng said. Level 9? Jian Wushuang asked in surprise. Level 9 of the Star River secret skill could enhance one's offensive power 27 times. It was already very amazing. That explains the incredible strength of the ancient god clansmen. In spite of their shallow comprehension in the Tao, even the weakest 1-star copper-armored ancient god can compete with an advanced divine, realm expert, Jian Wushuang's side. When he was in the outer layer of the Eternal Zone, he had witnessed how the ancient gods fought with the human disciples in the divine realm. Those demon gods had poor Tao comprehension, but they possessed a terrifying level of strength. Any copper-armored ancient god was as strong as, or even much stronger than, an advanced divine, realm expert. Not to mention the fact that those ancient gods had just awakened their bloodline and gone to the outer layer to practice their combat skills. They would be comparable to superior divine realm experts in no time at all, even if they were just 1-star copper-armored ancient gods. That was due to their incredible physical strength, which resulted from their unique talent and, more importantly, the Star River secret skill. Once their bloodline was awakened, these 1-star ancient gods could cultivate level 6 or 7 of the Star River secret skill, which would enhance their offensive power 18 or 21 times. With such an advantage in physical strength, they would be completely terrifying at that time. Jian Wushuang, your bloodline is very pure, even purer than mine. Since I've cultivated up to level 3, you will definitely be able to as well. But that's the highest level we can cultivate. We can't cultivate level 4 or higher until we go through the baptism and awaken our bloodline. Gu Changfeng said. Level 3. Jian Wushuang nodded to himself. All right, you can cultivate by yourself. I'll wait for you outside, Gu Changfeng said before walking out of the temple. After that, Jian Wushuang was left alone in the temple. Jian Wushuang sat down cross-legged and looked at the stone wall in front of him with a hint of expectation. The human warriors in the Firmament territory are extremely eager to cultivate the Star River secret skill, but they have to find ways to get ancient god essence blood before cultivating it. The higher levels require more ancient god essence blood. Can I cultivate the Star River secret skill without the essence blood? Jian Wushuang thought. He was not completely sure whether he really had the ancient god bloodline or not. But now, he could find out by cultivating the Star River secret skill. As long as he could cultivate 1 or 2 levels of the Star River secret skill successfully without absorbing ancient god essence blood, it would mean that he really did possess the ancient god bloodline and could definitely transform into an ancient god after experiencing the ancient god baptism. If he failed, it meant that he just had a similar spiritual aura to the ancient gods instead of possessing the ancient gods' bloodline. Let me start. Jian Wushuang started to cultivate level 1 on the stone wall without making too much preparation. It was comparably the easiest one, so Jian Wushuang started cultivating it. However, he discovered that he had succeeded in cultivating it on the first try. Did I succeed? Jian Wushuang's eyes sparkled with excitement. As he had succeeded without absorbing the ancient god essence blood, it meant that he really did have the ancient god's bloodline. He began to practice level 2 without pause. The Star River secret skill was closely related to the ancient god bloodline, so the purer his bloodline was, the easier it would be for him to cultivate it. Obviously, Jian Wushuang possessed a very pure ancient god bloodline, so he cultivated the first 3 levels of the Star River secret skill in less than an hour. He stood up and activated the Star River secret skill while still inside the temple. It's so strong. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists and felt his power increase by 9 times. At this moment, his eyes sparkled with excitement. Because he cultivated the heavenly creation skill, he had already been comparable to a divine realm expert in physical strength. Now that the Star River secret skill had enhanced his physical strength 9 times, he was even stronger than an ordinary divine realm expert in all aspects, even though he was still just a skyscraping realm expert. Now, even if I don't use my sword heart, I can compete with those superior divine realm experts. If I do use my sword heart, very few superior divine realm experts can defeat me, Jian Wushuang thought with a confident look. Of course, he was referring to the human superior divine realm experts in the firmament territory. It would be different when he encountered special clans like the Ancient God clan. For example, the gold-armored Ancient God he met in the outer layer of the Eternal Zone. That 1-star gold-armored Ancient God had easily smashed Long Tao, the genius disciple of the Immortal Dynasty, to death with a single hammer. With such terrifying strength, he was far stronger than superior divine realm experts. He was probably comparable to eternal realm experts. However, Jian Wushuang should still be weaker than that gold-armored Ancient God. The Star River secret skill can be cultivated to a higher level. Jian Wushuang looked at the stone walls eagerly, but then he shook his head. Unfortunately, I'm only in the skyscraping realm. I can't cultivate the higher levels until after the baptism, when I transform into an ancient god. Chapter 726, Underground Palace. Chapter 726, Underground Palace. After cultivating up to the 3rd level of the Star River secret skill, Jian Wushuang immediately left the palace. Outside of the palace, Changfeng was still waiting quietly. After seeing Jian Wushuang, Changfeng asked, "How did it go?" "I have made it to the 3rd level," Jian Wushuang said with a smile. "I knew it," Changfeng said, and also revealed a smile. "Changfeng, I heard you talk to Gulan about the underground palace." "What is that?" Jian Wushuang asked. "The underground palace is a place our tribe uses for honing the fighting skills of disciples. If you want to go there, I can guide you," Changfeng said. "All right, lead the way," Jian Wushuang said. Changfeng raised his eyebrows, then guided Jian Wushuang to the underground palace. Under the guidance of Changfeng, Jian Wushuang arrived at an empty loft with a passage that led to the underground. Following the passage, Jian Wushuang quickly reached the underground palace. The underground palace was actually a huge open space with a humongous gem shining at the top. Because of this gem, there was not much difference between being in the underground palace or being outside. "Is this the underground palace?" Jian Wushuang asked while looking at the space, which had 3 different regions in the center. These 3 regions were covered by 3 great restrictions, in which only a few figures were visible. Changfeng explained, "The underground palace can only be used to hone fighting skills. While you train here, the opponents you face are the puppet fighters which were obtained by the ancient god clan while following the ancient god many years ago. Those puppet fighters were specifically refined, so they would be the most suitable opponents for honing fighting skills." The 3 regions of the underground palace represent 3 different tests: the heaven-level test, earth-level test, and human-level test. In the human-level test, the opponent is only 1 puppet fighter. However, the earth-level test has 10 puppet fighters. As for the heaven-level test, there are 100 puppet fighters. And each test is divided into 9 levels of difficulty. Every test has different levels of difficulty. So, even if you can defeat the 10 puppet fighters in the first level of the earth-level test, that does not mean you can beat the 100 puppet fighters in the first level of the heaven-level test. The test is different, so the difficulty is different as well. The difficulty of these tests can be controlled by the challenger, so you can adjust it yourself. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. 3 regions, 3 different tests, all different in nature, and each test had 9 levels of difficulty. Besides, those who fight in the underground palace can only rely on their own fighting skills. Nothing else can be used. Of course, your swordsmanship can be used, Changfeng said, but there is no sense in telling you so much about it. Pick a region and give it a try. Okay, Jian Wushuang said, and nodded his head. After looking at the 3 regions in front of him, he didn't hesitate and went directly towards the central region, where the earth-level test was. As soon as he entered the restriction, Jian Wushuang saw 10 towering figures standing in front of him. He chose to enter the earth-level test, so the opponents were obviously the 10 puppet fighters. "Come on." The Emperor's sword appeared in his hands, and battle intent flickered in his eyes. The 10 puppet fighters also did not give him any time. As soon as Jian Wushuang appeared, the 10 puppet fighters all began to move at the same time. Swish, 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 swish. The 10 puppet fighters all used different weapons, so they were good at different aspects. Some were good at offensive power, some were good at speed, and some were good at entanglement. The 10 puppet fighters instantly charged towards him and attacked at the same time. Jian Wushuang also forwarded to the fight immediately with moving Emperor's sword in succession. But at the moment of the first movement, Jian Wushuang felt quite surprised. There is no trace of the Tao. In the underground palace, it seems to be impossible to use the Tao. Does that mean it's useless no matter how high one's comprehension of the Tao is? Jian Wushuang immediately thought about it, but he quickly discovered that it was not just the Tao that couldn't be used here. Even his sword heart couldn't be used in this fight. He was also unable to perform the Star River secret skill. The only thing he could depend on was his own swordsmanship. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The Emperor's sword in Jian Wushuang's hands was an eternal weapon, but its power also couldn't be used at all. It was the same as fighting these puppet fighters while using an ordinary longsword. The power and speed of these puppet fighters is similar to mine, as are all the other aspects. The only difference is in fighting skill, Jian Wushuang thought while narrowing his eyes slightly. Now, he clearly understood the training in the underground palace. The training in the underground palace was only aimed at their fighting skills. Any secret skills or other methods of fighting were of no use at all. And the strength of these puppet fighters was also the same as his, with the only difference being in their fighting skill. These 10 puppet fighters that Jian Wushuang was facing were at the first level of difficulty, only possessing very average fighting skills. Although the power of the 10 puppet fighters was no less than Jian Wushuang, and the battle was 10 against 1, Jian Wushuang was still easily able to defeat all 10 puppet fighters in a few moments. The first level of difficulty is no threat to me. Let me try the second level of difficulty. Jian Wushuang used his mind to communicate with the 10 puppet fighters, causing all 10 puppet fighters to strike at Jian Wushuang again. This time, the fighting skills of these 10 puppet fighters were much better than they were a moment ago. The fighting skills all the puppet fighters improved, and they even teamed up against him. This time, even Jian Wushuang wasn't able to win as easily as he had last time. However, he still succeeded while only depending on his swordsmanship. Next was the third level of difficulty. After reaching the third level, the fighting skills of these 10 puppet fighters had been extremely brilliant. Jian Wushuang even felt that the fighting skills of these puppet fighters, while at the third level, was not weaker than Gu Changfeng. That's to say, fighting these 10 puppet fighters was like fighting 10 Gu Changfengs that had joined forces to attack him. Fortunately, since their strength was equal, Jian Wushuang was able to muddle through with his excellent swordsmanship. After a while, he finally defeated a puppet fighter after finding a flaw. After he beat one of them, he was able to beat the rest of them one by one. Jian Wushuang succeeded in the third level of difficulty. However, on the fourth level, each of the 10 puppet fighters had a dreadful level of fighting skills, not much less than Jian Wushuang's. Once the 10 puppet fighters joined hands, even though Jian Wushuang tried his best, he only managed to fight them for a while before he was defeated. Chapter 7:27, Battling Techniques. Chapter 7:27, Battling Techniques. As Jian Wushuang walked out of the restriction of Earth level test, Gu Changfeng immediately stepped forward to greet him. Jian Wushuang, have you really passed the third stage of the Earth level test? Gu Changfeng stared at Jian Wushuang incredulously. Although he had remained outside the restriction the whole time, he had been watching Jian Wushuang fighting inside the restriction with great concentration. In the Earth level test, what Jian Wushuang faced was 10 puppet fighters, which could merely count as the medium level among the 3 kinds of tests. Once the test progressed to the second stage, no ordinary clansman could power through it. So far, even Gu Changfeng himself had been able to pass the second stage of the Earth level test. But Jian Wushuang had now passed the third stage of the Earth level test. When he battled with Jian Wushuang before, he could tell that Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship was of a very high caliber. Added to this, his offensive ability was overwhelming. However, he only expected Jian Wushuang to pass the second stage of the Earth level test at most. But to his surprise, perhaps this guy didn't reveal his true strength when he dueled with me. Gu Changfeng muttered to himself. Now, of the 3 types of tests there is, I've tried the Earth level. Next, I'll have a go at the Heaven level test, and then the Human level test. Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Then, he headed for the other 2 tests. In the Human level test, he would face only 1 puppet fighter. Despite the intimidating power this puppet fighter had, the pressure it imposed upon Jian Wushuang was obviously less than the Earth level test. After breaking through the first 3 stages, Jian Wushuang finally failed during the 4th stage. But what was quite remarkable was that he managed to put up a good fight against the puppet fighter in the 4th stage. The final test was the Heaven level test, which was also the most difficult one. In the Heaven level test, His opponents were 100 puppet fighters, which coordinated with each and other advanced on him from all directions. This put Jian Wushuang at a major disadvantage. Jian Wushuang passed the first and the second stage. But in the third stage, the puppet fighter launched ferocious attacks against Jian Wushuang, who exerted all his efforts to defend himself, but was eventually defeated. Among the three kinds of tests, the heaven-level test is the hardest one to deal with. As to the other two, they're just fine. Jian Wushuang had now gained a clear understanding of all the tests. After experiencing the three varied tests, he began to have high expectations of the underground palace. Among the three kinds of tests the underground palace offered, the human-level test aimed to hone one's individual battling skills, while the earth-level test and the heaven-level test were aimed at testing how a man could handle sieges and converging attacks. Each of these tests was further divided into 9 stages according to their assorted level of difficulty. They provided a great opportunity for men continuously seeking to improve their battle techniques. For Jian Wushuang, this was a perfect place to gain more experience. I thought my battle techniques were already powerful, but who knows, I failed the third stage of the heaven-level test in the underground palace. Seems that there is still much room for improvement in terms of my battle techniques and swordsmanship. Jian Wushuang murmured, his hands clenched tightly. Now that he had been trapped in the ancient god clan, it was impossible for him to get out. As he would be here for a long time, he would not just lie there and do nothing. Instead, he decided to try every means to improve his strength, including polishing his battle techniques. These kinds of techniques would certainly come in handy when he was in a fierce fight or tangled warfare. For the remainder of his days there, Jian Wushuang spent most of his time inside the underground palace, constantly familiarizing himself with these 3 sorts of tests. He continually made progress by undergoing the pitched battles day and night. It could be said that he had been challenging himself, and his offensive ability was also enhanced. The 8th tribe was quiet and as uneventful as ever. However, many clansmen of the 8th tribe already heard that Jian Wushuang was honing his skills in the underground palace feverishly, and many of them could not help but be amazed by his gallantry. Soon, a month went by. Inside the stone house, Guyong was busy polishing his longbow. Just then, Gulon ran towards him from outside. "Father!" Gulon shouted, a little out of breath. "What's the matter?" Guyong stopped what he was doing and turned to look at Gulon. "That Jian Wushuang. Guyong stammered, still out of breath. "Jian Wushuang." Guyang's expression changed. Jian Wushuang was rescued and brought here by Guyong. Knowing that Jian Wushuang was a descendant of the militant warriors, not only Guyong, but the whole tribe had been paying close attention to his progress. "What's the matter with Jian Wushuang?" Guyong urgently repeated. "Father, Jian Wushuang has been practicing in the underground palace since he arrived here, right? And a month ago, he passed the 3rd stage of the earth-level test in his first attempt, but failed at the 3rd stage of the heaven-level test." Gulon said. "I know that." Guyong nodded. Thanks to Changfeng, the news that Jian Wushuang already passed the 3rd stage of the earth-level test had long since spread. Loads of clansmen of the 8th tribe were aware of it. But today, just 1 month after that, Jian Wushuang successfully broke through the 3rd stage of the heaven-level test and passed the 4th stage of the human-level test and the 4th stage of the earth-level test, respectively. Gulon said earnestly. "What?" Hearing this, even Guyong was astonished. Among the 3 kinds of tests in the underground palace, the most difficult of them was the heaven-level test. In spite of there being 9 stages in this test, if a man could pass just 1 stage, his offensive ability would already be in the top rank. If he proceeded to overcome the 2nd stage, he would be even more amazing. As for passing the 3rd stage, Only a handful of members of their entire clan had achieved that. Those who had managed to conquer the third stage of the heaven level test in their tribe all reached the level of 2-star ancient god, and Guiyang was one of them. But Jian Wushuang, someone who had neither awakened his bloodline nor become an ancient god, already upgraded his offensive skills to that level. He is really the son of a militant warrior. Militant warriors put their lives on the line every day. Through a large number of life-threatening battles, their offensive abilities have become way stronger than ours. We have become used to living a comfortable life within the tribe. Guiyang could not stifle his praise. At present, the members of the ancient god clan all lived in tribes. Some of them would often participate in fight competitions within their tribes, but these were just competitions, and therefore their lives would not be at stake. Maybe the only chance they could put up a real fight was the arrival of outsiders, which usually occurred every 100 years. This would give an opportunity to those clansmen with awakened bloodline and let them realize what a life and death struggle was really like. Nevertheless, due to the lack of experience in life and death combat, when the clansmen of the ancient god clan got in a fight against outsiders, they were usually at a disadvantage. Every time when the outsiders came here, the ancient god clan would suffer a great loss, while the casualties suffered by the outsiders would be minor. Jian Wushuang has an unbelievable talent for battle. He has made such a progress in just 1 month. In the next few years, his progress will certainly be more striking. Guiyang was quite hopeful of seeing Jian Wushuang's talent grow. Chapter 7:28, Launching Challenges Frenetically. Chapter 7:28, Launching Challenges Frenetically. Just as Guiyang predicted, as time passed, Jian Wushuang was progressing rapidly. After he passed the third stage of the heaven level test, it only took him another 6 months to overcome the fourth stage. Later, Jian Wushuang stayed in the underground palace to hone his fighting skills, and he spent most of his time focusing on the heaven level test. It was the 5th stage of the heaven level test. In this stage, thickly dotted puppet fighters holding various weapons and launching all sorts of attacks would pour in from all directions. Jian Wushuang had to face the siege of 100 puppet fighters all alone, with simply one sword in his hand. His swordsmanship was both unmatched and elaborate, almost flawless. His moves were also incredibly swift. He dashed, shifted, and leaped with great agility, fooling around with the 100 puppet fighters, although there were 100 puppet fighters besieging him. As he made every move, only 20 or fewer puppet fighters would attack him simultaneously. If all 100 puppet fighters launched an attack simultaneously, Jian Wushuang would have definitely struggled to deal with them. But with only 20 puppet fighters attacking at one time, it was much easier for him to handle. Drop dead! Jian Wushuang's long sword suddenly flashed out like a bolt of lightning, which flitted across the 2 puppet fighters right in front of him. The sword went so fast that both of the 2 puppet fighters were struck down before they could react. When the 2 puppet fighters were defeated, the ring of encirclement before Jian Wushuang instantly revealed a crack. Then, the power of Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship was unleashed. He started fighting frantically. In the end, he fended off all of the 100 puppet fighters and got out. He had passed the 5th stage of the heaven level test. Walking out of the heaven level test, Jian Wushuang felt quite relieved. The heaven level test is far more difficult than the human level test and the earth level test. The scale of the difficulty goes higher and higher in the order of the 9 stages. It only took me 6 months to get through the 4th stage, but to nail the 5th stage, I spent 6 full years. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. By now, he had stayed in the 8th tribe for 6 years and 7 months. During this time, he spent most of his time in the underground palace. But up to now, he only made it to the 5th stage of the heaven level test. There are 9 stages with increasing difficulty. Since the 5th stage is so much harder than the 4th, the 6th stage must be way harder than the 5th. Even for me, without at least 10 years practice, it'll be highly difficult to get through the 6th stage. Jian Wushuang mumbled to himself. But anyway, the speed of his progress already defied the natural order. After all, in the whole 8th tribe, no one had ever passed the 5th stage of the heaven level test before. He was the first one to achieve it, and all it cost him was 6 years. In the eyes of other clansmen, this was almost unthinkable. The tests in the underground palace were extraordinarily useful in upgrading my battling techniques. However, in the 3 kinds of tests, all I need to confront are just puppet fighters. No matter what, puppet fighters are merely puppets. There must still be a huge gap between puppets and real human warriors. I've already conquered the 5th stage of the heaven level test. It would be meaningless to stay on and try to break through the 6th stage. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang left the underground palace. Soon after he left the underground palace, he went straight for a clansman of the 8th tribe. "Gu Jin, I want to challenge you," Jian Wushuang announced, staring at the tall and sturdy clansman of the ancient god clan before him. This clansman was called Gu Jin. He was a 1-star ancient god with an awakened bloodline, a silver-armored ancient god. Although it was not long since he had awakened his bloodline, and though his strength was considered average among all the 1-star silver-armored ancient god, he was still on par with a superior divine, realm expert of human warriors, or even qualified to be a top-ranking superior divine realm expert. "Jian Wushuang, you, a kid with no awakened bloodline, want to challenge me?" Gu Jin asked with a curious expression. "Yes, take your best shot. Strike now," Jian Wushuang said with overbearing battle intent. "Then boy, you'd better be careful. I won't go easy on you." Gu Jin's eyes were glistening with a touch of fury. Then he launched an attack. Jian Wushuang's eyes were burning with eagerness. He immediately thrust his emperor sword forward. He did not perform the sword heart power, but had fully released the energy of the 3rd level of the Star River secret skill. Relying on his swordsmanship and his battling techniques he had honed in the underground palace for 6 years, he went straight forward to take on Gu Jin. At first, Gu Jin did not treat this fight with Jian Wushuang seriously, but after crossing swords with his opponent, he was taken aback by Jian Wushuang's superior swordsmanship. In that moment, he transformed into a silver-armored ancient god and got ready to unleash all of his power during this battle against Jian Wushuang. The intense battle continued. Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship and battling techniques were more powerful than Gu Jin's. But without employing the sword heart power, Gu Jin's strength would have far been superior to Jian Wushuang's. Thus, in the battle of pure force, Jian Wushuang tangled with Gu Jin for a long time and finally ended up being defeated due to a minor disadvantage. Impressive. Without awakened bloodline, he fought against me solely with his swordsmanship and battling techniques. His abilities can nearly parallel mine. After defeating Jian Wushuang, Gu Jin felt quite surprised by this battle. Gu Jin was very clear that even though he had beaten Jian Wushuang, he merely scraped a win. The strength Jian Wushuang just displayed was not much less than his own, and most crucially Jian Wushuang was still making rapid progress. There's still plenty of room for my strength to improve. Now, who's next? Jian Wushuang looked to challenge anyone present. There were numerous experts in the ancient god clan. In the 8th tribe, there were already around 10,000 1-star ancient gods that could rival superior divine realm experts of human warriors. Some of them had reached the top level of superior divine realm experts, and some even exceeded the range of what the superior divine realm experts of human warriors were capable of. These clansmen were all targets that Jian Wushuang wanted to challenge. When he challenged others to a fight, he always avoided using his sword heart power. He merely relied on his own strength, mingled with the Star River secret skill, along with his swordsmanship and battle techniques. These kinds of challenges would be as effective as the tests of the underground palace. Perhaps it could push the limits of his skills even higher. Challenging others frantically, fighting against others frantically. Jian Wushuang would challenge 3 or 4 one-star ancient gods almost every day after each of these fights. He would also spend some time reflecting on his performance and summarizing important points. The next day, he would start a new round of challenges. Through this kind of feverish challenges, his strength kept soaring as well. As seasons came and went, time flew by. Now, Jian Wushuang had stayed in the 8th tribe for 10 years. Chapter 7:29, Traveling to Gain Experience. Chapter 7:29, Traveling to Gain Experience. 10 years was a long time for Jian Wushuang, but for the members of the ancient god clan or the human experts, 10 years was merely a fleeting moment. After these 10 years, compared with his previous performance, Jian Wushuang's overall strength had improved significantly. Particularly in recent years, he started to challenge many clansmen in the 8th tribe. Eventually, he had crossed swords with almost every top-leveled one-star ancient god in the 8th tribe. Once he had finished challenging every strong opponent available, Jian Wushuang was going to leave. In a stone house, the weather-worn faced elder Ing was sitting by a table, while Jian Wushuang stood in front of her. "My boy, are you leaving?" Elder Ing looked up at Jian Wushuang. "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded. "I'm going to travel to other tribes." "Travel? You're actually going to challenge more experts in other tribes, aren't you?" Elder Ing asked with a playful tone. When he heard this, Jian Wushuang could not help but smile. Indeed, in the past few years, he had challenged all the powerful one-star ancient gods in the 8th tribe. For those who were exceptionally tough, he actually challenged them more often. Through these kinds of challenges, he had made amazing progress. However, after doing those challenges for several years, those one-star ancient gods in the 8th tribe could no longer surprise him. Thus, he was longing to go to other tribes and challenge their one-star ancient gods in order to further enhance his power. A militant warrior is always obsessed with fighting. This is true. Elder Ing exclaimed. "Well, just go. When you finish challenging everyone you want to battle with, you can come back anytime." "Thank you." Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude for Elder Ying's understanding, and then turned around and left the room. On that very day, Jian Wushuang departed from the 8th tribe and began to travel through the Eternal Zone. His first destination was naturally another tribe of the ancient god clan. A few days later, he arrived in the 7th tribe, which was the closest one to the 8th tribe. Jian Wushuang had some acquaintances in the 7th tribe. Gu Qiong, the man who died for rescuing him, was also from this 7th tribe. Being part of the ancient god clan, the men in the 7th tribe were very friendly to Jian Wushuang. Then Jian Wushuang told them he was a militant warrior and started to challenge others immediately. As he did in the 8th tribe, he challenged all-powerful one-star ancient gods in the 7th tribe one by one. While he was fighting against those one-star ancient gods, he was also honing his own skills. Once he had challenged all the powerful one-star ancient gods in the 7th tribe, he set off towards the 6th tribe. As time passed, Jian Wushuang traveled from one tribe to another and challenged each of the experts in those tribes. Finally, he traveled across all 10 tribes, battling against the majority of one-star ancient gods within each tribe. After traveling across the 10 tribes, Jian Wushuang arrived at the other end of the Eternal Zone. This was an endless wasteland, a place inhabited by ferocious beasts. Militant warriors are used to fighting off wild beasts in this endless wasteland. I am, as everyone knows, a militant warrior. No matter what, I should take an adventure in this endless wasteland. Gazing at the ancient deserted land stretched out before him, Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to step out onto this land. On that day, Jian Wushuang began traveling across the endless wasteland. Soon he came across some wild beasts. The wild beasts were all of intimidating sizes, which turned out to be much larger than the men of the ancient god clan. Their levels of strength were also overwhelming. Even the weakest of them were still paralleled to superior divine realm experts of human beings. And added to their physicality, many of those wild beasts possessed certain eccentric powers, which could be very tricky to tackle. Jian Wushuang adventured in this endless wasteland alone. He bumped into myriads of wild beasts and battled them numerous times. Fighting against wild beasts was very different from challenging the men of the ancient god clan, because every battle with the wild beasts was a life and death struggle. Each time he fought, he would have to go all out, and very often he needed to risk his life to defeat his opponents. Among all these battles, there were 2 fights in which Jian Wushuang found himself in real life-threatening situations. The first one was when he dueled with a wild beast with a total of 8 huge arms. It looked like a giant mantis, and its arms were unexpectedly sharp. When Jian Wushuang first cast an eye on this mantis-like wild beast, he could tell that the aura of this beast was weak, far from reaching the eternal realm. Jian Wushuang thought it would be no problem for him to kill this wild beast with a burst of his full power. But when deep in battle, he found that the strength of this wild beast was much more terrifying than he had imagined. This wild beast had extremely explosive power, which matched most of the one-star silver-armored ancient gods. And above all, its offensive ability was just too great. Its 8 sharp arms were like 8 sabers. When it wielded them at the same time, Jian Wushuang, who had only 1 sword in hand, found it impossible to defend himself. This wild beast was born to kill. Jian Wushuang's battle techniques were already very frightening. Adding his sword heart power, the force he produced was comparable to that of this wild beast. But when he confronted this wild beast head-on, he was being beaten by it every time. He was thoroughly crushed, almost had no way to strike back. After fighting for a few minutes, Jian Wushuang was already badly injured and had to retreat to save his life. He finally escaped by casting the first level of the Dragon Blood secret skill, which increased his swiftness by a multiple of 10. In the second crisis, what Jian Wushuang ran into was a wild beast that had already reached the Eternal Realm, and was the most fearsome one out of all the beasts in the Eternal Realm. When Jian Wushuang spotted this wild beast, he planned to get around it. But to his surprise, this wild beast sensed his presence. The moment Jian Wushuang walked in its vicinity, this wild beast detected him. And then it started to chase Jian Wushuang. What most alarming was the speed of this wild beast. When it exerted all its effort, it ran much faster than in Chao, who he had cast a secret skill to hunt down Jian Wushuang. This time, Jian Wushuang performed the second level of the Dragon Blood secret skill and increased his speed by 100 times, but he still failed to outrun that wild beast. In the end, Jian Wushuang reluctantly gave up his slaughter body to let it lure the wild beast away, allowing his world body to flee. Being forced to flee, Jian Wushuang felt extremely helpless. This wasteland was too large. Although the wild beasts did not abound, their average strength was extraordinarily strong, and many of them could rival those in the Eternal Realm. Jian Wushuang had already experienced two life-threatening moments when he was wandering on the outskirts of the endless wasteland. As it stood, he did not dare approach the depths of the endless wasteland. Jian Wushuang just kept traveling on this land. He was completely absorbed in the pleasure of these risky adventures and was unconcerned about how much time had flown by. Finally, he came to a halt at a deserted mountaintop of the endless wasteland. Chapter 730, the second level of the Sword Heart. Chapter 730, the second level of the Sword Heart. On the deserted mountaintop, a fresh breeze swept across Jian Wushuang's face. He sat down in the breeze with his legs crossed and gently closed his eyes. After traveling, fighting, battling for so many years, he was proud his improvement thus far, felt the thrill of facing a powerful opponent, and also experienced the anxiety and desperation of being driven to the edge. But now he had calmed down. All those feelings had been replaced by a sense of calm. Now, Jian Wushuang's mind was unprecedentedly poised. It's been 80 years. The past 80 years have certainly been colorful. Sitting on the mountaintop cross-legged, Jian Wushuang was smiling. His smile was sincere and brought about by the real joy held in his heart. 80 years had passed since he started to visit the 10 tribes one by one, and then entered the boundless wilds to tackle various wild beasts. The insights that he gained bit by bit during 80 years of frenetical challenges and battles suddenly matured at this moment. He managed to rise abruptly, carried by his accumulated strength. This was just like what some of the human warriors did. They spent many years to study the way, trying to expand their understanding of it. And one day, the comprehension just dawned on them, with all the wonders combined into one and infused with their hearts. This was exactly what happened to Jian Wushuang. He had learned and experienced many things over the course of the past 80 years. It had not yet been 40 years since he left the ancient world and journeyed to the eternal world, but this wasn't even half as long as the time he spent in this eternal zone. In the past 80 years, maybe his strength did not increase dramatically, and he was still in the skyscraping realm, but his experience grew significantly. Now, he had accumulated a huge amount of battle experience and innumerable battle techniques. These were huge gains for him, and what mattered most for him was the baptism of his heart. Right now, Jian Wushuang was sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop with a bland smile. Despite his benign face, his body was emitting a stream of fierce sword essence. He appeared to have turned into an unmatched sharp sword that could pierce the sky. This sword had been polished for a long time and was ready to shine. Meanwhile, something was changing inside Jian Wushuang's body. He was metamorphosing. Yes, his heart was metamorphosing. As his heart was changing, the radiance released by the sharp sword that he had transformed into started to dim. Slowly, the sword returned to its normal state. In the end, it completely vanished. On the peak of the mountain, Jian Wushuang's hair was fluttering in the wind. If someone in a place nearby were to look at him at this moment, he would regard Jian Wushuang as an ordinary guy because no trace of sword intent was apparent. In fact, his sword intent had already dwelled deep down his heart. Learning the sword principle starts from the shallow, then to the profound, and returns to the shallow once again. Sword Heart, Level 2. Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes. It seems that the brilliance of a powerful sword had burst out, but the surrounding void did not stir. This was the phase Jian Wushuang accomplished at this moment, which was actually the Level 2 of Sword Heart. Learning the Sword Heart was the threshold of studying the sword principle. Just like the separation of warriors, the study of Sword Heart was also divided into 6 levels. Back then, when Jian Wushuang had an epiphany halfway through his journey to the 9th Heaven Road and conjured the Sword Heart, he merely stepped into the course of Sword Heart study which was not even counted as level 1. After that, Jian Wushuang began to practice strenuously on the Sword Mountain for 6 years, and since then had made great progress in the sword cultivation. Now, he had reached level 1 of the Sword Heart Study and thoroughly consolidated his power. During the 80 years he spent in the Eternal Zone, he first challenged 1-star ancient gods of the 10 tribes, and then came to the boundless wilds for adventure, and experienced many fierce battles against highly powerful wild beasts for decades. Those battles and experiences elevated his heart and soul. He also made a huge breakthrough in the sword principle, and successfully progressed to level 2 of the Sword Heart Study. In the Eternal Realm, only a handful of people could reach this level. Similarly, when his sword heart skill made a breakthrough and was fully turned on, its power would soar and his ability in swordsmanship would rise to a new level. According to my master, it normally takes a genius of the sword principle more than 1,000 years to upgrade to level 2 from level 1, but I achieved this within 80 years. Jian Wushuang beamed. Each level of the Sword Heart Study represented a metamorphosis. Accordingly, it was extremely difficult to progress from one level to another. For those sword principle experts in the Eternal Realm, it was common for them to be stuck at the same level for thousands of years before making a new breakthrough. Therefore, the accomplishment Jian Wushuang achieved in merely 80 years was a miracle. After 80 years of adventures, I've gained a lot. It's time to go back. Jian Wushuang got to his feet and looked into the distance. What he was gazing at was the surroundings of the 10 tribes of the ancient god clans. On that day, Jian Wushuang set off on his journey back to the ancient god clan. A month later, he already traveled beyond the endless wasteland. Then, after another 2 weeks, he finally returned to the 8th tribe where he had lived for 10 years. In the colossal mountains of the 8th tribe, Jian Wushuang was strolling among the tribe. Soon, some of the clansmen began to recognize him. That's Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang? Really? 70 years ago, Jian Wushuang left our tribe to travel around the world. Men of other tribes sometimes still talk about him. They said he continued to challenge those 1-star clansmen in other tribes, but after a while, he disappeared. Rumors had it that he went to the boundless wilds for adventure. It seems as though he has finished traveling and returned. Endless wasteland. I heard that place is extremely dangerous. Only militant warriors dare to enter the boundless wilds. When those clansmen saw Jian Wushuang, some discussed him in whispers. Some went forward to greet him. Jian Wushuang had caused a huge sensation in the 8th tribe 70 years ago when he challenged those 1-star clansmen like mad. Many of them had crossed swords with Jian Wushuang, so Jian Wushuang was no stranger to them. "Ha, Jian Wushuang." A loud and clear laughter sounded, and then a strong-looking young man headed towards Jian Wushuang. "Gulan." At the sight of this man, Jian Wushuang beamed. "You have returned from your adventures." Gulan walked to Jian Wushuang and gave him a soft punch. Then he said in haste, "Great timing. Come with me. Let's go to the underground palace." "To the underground palace? But why?" Jian Wushuang asked, bewildered. "A new militant warrior just arrived in our tribe. His name is Jiu You. Right now, he is going through the heaven-level test in the underground palace. I heard that he has already breezed through the 5th stage." Gulan replied, Chapter 731, The Militant Warrior, Jiu You. Chapter 731, The Militant Warrior, Jiu You. A militant warrior. Jian Wushuang was surprised. Being a militant warrior himself, he had never seen any other militant warriors during his dozens of years of adventure in the boundless wilds. Wild beasts were the only things that he had encountered. That was because the land was so vast and the militant warriors on it were so few, and has broken through to the 5th level of the heaven level test. Jian Wushuang wore a faint smile. When he left the 8th tribe, he had also broken through to that level. "Let's go," he said to Gulan, and then headed to the underground palace with him. Soon after, they arrived there and found many familiar faces among the crowd that was gathered, such as Gu Changfeng, Gu Yang, and Eldering. Jian Wushuang. An uproar broke out among the crowd when they saw Jian Wushuang appear. Gu Changfeng hurriedly walked up to him and said, "Jian Wushuang, you're back from your adventure." "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded and greeted those old friends. "Jian Wushuang, look carefully at that man," Guyang said to him with a smile while pointing at a man who was taking the heaven-level test on the battlefield. "He is named Jiu You, a militant warrior like you, and has just come back from the boundless wilds not long ago." Jian Wushuang immediately looked toward where Guyang pointed. There, he saw an elegant man dressed in a loose golden robe with his chest exposed in the air. The man held a long red spear in his hand, and from the looks of it, it was an eternal weapon. Though the power of eternal weapons could not be released fully in the heaven-level test, this man still forced the 100 puppet fighters surrounding him into a corner with his spear. He is indeed excellent in utilizing power. While looking at the man, Jian Wushuang's became fired up. At that point, he could tell that the man was a real expert who was good at fighting. This man is challenging the 6th level of the heaven-level test, facing 100 puppet fighters who can launch extremely powerful attacks and overpower all the clansmen here, but still, he is utterly routing them. Every time he strikes out in a seemingly casual way, he can catch the flaw of his opponent's joint attack and break them. Those puppet fighters are now forced to keep busy defending themselves. This is a man of great power. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands while secretly praising him. He continued watching for a while before the man ended the fight by defeating all the puppet fighters. The man passed the 6th level of the heaven-level test. Bravo! It's so scary that he did it, passing the 6th level of the heaven-level test. His fighting skill is really impressive. Is this what a militant warrior can do? The palace was inundated with the onlookers' discussions. Gu Changfeng held his fists tightly and secretly thought with excitement, "He is too damn powerful." Among the crowd, only Jian Wushuang still maintained a calm demeanor. Right then, he heard Elder Ying's voice say, "Jian Wushuang, follow me. I want to introduce you to Jiu You." "Okay." He nodded and followed her. Then he was led to where Jiu You had just walked down to after finishing his test. "Jiu You, please allow me to introduce this man to you. He is called Jian Wushuang, a militant warrior just like you," Eldering said to Jiu You. "Really?" The man looked at Jian Wushuang with surprise in his eyes. "You're a militant warrior, too." "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded to him. "I can see it now." The man looked Jian Wushuang up and down before continuing. "I can feel the aura of a real expert coming from you, something you can get only through suffering. But it's a pity that you have not awoken your bloodline and are not a 1-star ancient god yet." The man sighed, and there was disappointment in his eyes. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang retorted confidently, "It's true that I haven't awoken my bloodline, but it doesn't mean that you can overpower me." "Is that so?" Jiu You shot him an amazed glance. At this, Eldering, Guyang, and the others all looked at Jian Wushuang with strange expressions. They had witnessed how powerful Jiu You was just now, and, based on his fighting skill, and that he had awoken his bloodline, which had a high density, they believed that he had to be more powerful than they had seen. Thus, they were really surprised upon hearing Jian Wushuang say that Jiu You could not overpower him. Interesting. Jiu You wore a big smile and said, I had adventured in the boundless wilds for many years, and during that time, I met two extremely powerful opponents who were militant warriors too. And now, here you are, the third militant warrior. I don't know why you're so confident, but since we're here as two militant warriors, why don't we have a fight? You're right. It's hard to meet a militant warrior, and it would be a great pity if we don't fight today. Jian Wushuang accepted his invitation. Great. In order to make it fair, I won't transform into an ancient god during the fight, Jiu You answered happily. Jian Wushuang smiled while replying, You might not want to transform, but I'll force you to. Well. Jiu You knit his brows hard, and there was a battle intent rising in his eyes. Jian Wushuang had the same expression. Militant warriors were called, so because they loved to fight. They got bored with the leisure and dull life in the clan, so they went to the boundless wilds for adventure. Given that there were not many militant warriors, even in the whole ancient god clan, they could rarely battle each other. That was why immediately after Jian Wushuang and Jiu You met, their battle intent became aroused. The onlookers were not surprised that these two were going to fight each other. On the contrary, they were looking forward to seeing that. A fight between two militant warriors. Who do you think is more powerful between them? I think Jiu You is. After all, he has awoken his bloodline, and we all have learned about his power from the test. He has passed the 6th level of the heaven level test, while Jian Wushuang had only passed the 5th level before he left. I'd agree with you under the condition of Jiu You transforming into an ancient god during the fight, but you just heard him say that he won't. In that case, I think Jian Wushuang stands a chance to win. He passed the 5th level 70 years ago, so he's not weak, and he might be able to pass the 6th level now. Chapter 732, Fighting Jiu You. Chapter 732, Fighting Jiu You. In a vast open space, Jian Wushuang and Jiu You stood facing each other, hundreds of feet apart. Around them were the onlookers from the 8th tribe. The third militant warrior I've met. Jiu You licked his lips, and a sliver of light escaped his eyes. Let me test how much I've progressed during those 80 years through you, a militant warrior who has awoken his bloodline. Jian Wushuang's eyes were burning with fighting desire. As their eyes met in the air, there seemed to be a sparkle between them. The next moment, Jiu You suddenly disappeared from the sight of the many onlookers, and when he was seen again, he had crossed hundreds of feet to arrive in front of Jian Wushuang. His long red spear struck out right at him. Carrying formidable power, once the spear caught its target, it could pierce through him. However, seeing the spear approaching him, Jian Wushuang did not move to dodge it, but stood there to watch it go through his body. But no blood came out, as if the spear had gone through something insubstantial. It's his residual shadow, someone cried out. The onlookers were wide-eyed in amazement. The very next moment, Jiu You suddenly spun his head to look to the side. There, he saw a ghost-like figure appear out of thin air that came slashing toward him. The blow seemed simple. Even a child could make one more complex than that. Even so, Jiu Yu's eyes narrowed at the sight of it. Good boy. He simplified the move but did not weaken its power. This boy is really excellent at swordsmanship. Jiu You became serious. His spear swept out and collided with Jian Wushuang's sword. Clang! Jiu You heard a deep sound and felt an overwhelming power from the sword. He knew that he had been correct, that the blow was not as simple as it looked. And before he could make his next move, countless sword lights radiated from where the weapons met and flew toward him. Thousands of moves derived from one move. Interesting. However, seeing this, Jiu You laughed. He then waved his spear again, and with this single move, Countless spear shadows rushed through the air toward the sword light. Clang, 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 clang. A series of sounds of metal on metal rang out, and in just a few breaths, they echoed 100 times. From those sounds, the onlookers could tell that the two had exchanged 100 moves. They are so fast. They are fighting at a terrifying pace. They are moving so fast that I can barely see how they are attacking. The onlookers were astonished by this scene. Even someone as strong as Gu Yang, a 2-star ancient god, could not help being amazed. He was impressed by the fighting skills of both Jian Wushuang and Jiu You. On the battlefield, sometimes both Jian Wushuang and Jiu You tried to outspeed each other. Sometimes they fought with pure power, and sometimes with fighting skills, fully demonstrating what they had. For a long time, they were locked in a close battle. I've tried my best to battle him, aside from transforming into an ancient god, but I still can't gain the upper hand. Jiu You was shocked inside. As for Jian Wushuang, he looked grave. Though he has used all his fighting skills, he has yet to exert all his power and transform into an ancient god. It looks like I have to use some methods to force him to do that. Having made up his mind, Jian Wushuang changed his strategy. With a quiver of his body, a formidable power surged out from his sword heart. Level 2 of the sword heart turned out to be more powerful than level 1. He had only exerted 3/10 of the power of the sword heart, but it still improved his attacking force greatly. The others could see that Jian Wushuang's attacks suddenly had become fiercer than before, along with a great increase in speed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Jian Wushuang made 3 strikes in succession, each of them looking simple yet exquisite. Under such attacks, Jiu You drew back quickly. After he finally regained his balance, he had a grave expression on his face. Without awaking his bloodline, this boy can still exert the power of a 1-star silver-armored ancient god. What's more, he is as good at fighting as I am, but most of all, his swordsmanship is so excellent. Jiu You gasped in admiration. He simplified every one of his moves, which look simple yet are powerful. I'm no match for him in view of this. In order to defeat him, I'll have to transform into an ancient god, Jiu You muttered. The next moment, he growled in an undertone, and immediately the aura of his bloodline arose and surrounded him. His body began to bulge to over 10 meters in height. His whole body was covered by a golden light. It gleamed brightly under the sparkling demons hanging over the palace. He transformed into a gold-armored ancient god. Jian Wushuang was startled. Gold-armored ancient gods were the most powerful ones among all 3 of the bloodlines. Jian Wushuang had met a gold-armored ancient god before, when he was adventuring in the outer layer of the Eternal Zone. He had witnessed how that god had so easily killed a superior divine, realm expert, like killing a chick. Though, at that time, the god had just awoken his bloodline and had not reached his peak. Jiu You, being a militant warrior in addition to being a gold-armored ancient god, must be much more powerful than the one that I met, Jian Wushuang thought. Soon afterward, he was proved to be correct. Boom! After transforming into a gold-armored ancient god, Jiu You stomped hard on the ground, causing the void to shake. He then went up to Jian Wushuang and thrust his 10-meter-long spear at him. Chapter 733, The Baptismal Pool. Chapter 733, The Baptismal Pool. The spear seemed to cut the void open, which caused a huge vortex in the air. At the center of the vortex, there was a streak of terrifying red light, which turned out to be the spear itself. It's so powerful. The onlookers were amazed by the scene. Many of them could tell that Jiu Yu's strike was a 2-star level. A 2-star ancient god was equivalent to a human warrior in the eternal realm. That was to say, that strike reached the level of the eternal realm. Facing the attack, Jian Wushuang looked grave. His sword heart quivered violently in the sea of consciousness, and its power reached its peak. In an instant, he held the Emperor's sword up and struck out. Crash! Countless sword lights flew outward. The sky darkened. The surroundings began shaking. This move that Jian Wushuang just made was called Netherworld. He created it based on his meditation on sword principle during the last 80 years. Also, it was his most powerful technique, which had reached level 6 of the secret skill. In the next moment, the sword and the spear collided. There was no booming sound, as others had expected, but a squeezing sound of power crushing power. Suddenly, an overwhelming force swept over the surroundings from where the weapons met. Whoosh! Whoosh! Jian Wushuang and Jiu You were thrown backward quickly. The onlookers, who had been watching the fight from far away, were also affected by the force, but luckily they had many experts among them to shield them from it. After the two had regained their balance, they looked at each other closely, hundreds of feet apart. Jian Wushuang, how about we end this fight in a draw? Jiu You suddenly asked him. That's exactly what I was thinking. Jian Wushuang nodded. In fact, from the very beginning, he had intended to make it a friendly competition, as well as test how much he had progressed during those years. Therefore, there was no need to battle it out. Most importantly, he was not sure that he could defeat Jiu You. I've displayed most of my skills, including the most powerful one, but still I haven't defeated him yet. Though I have some hidden cards to use, I believe that he does as well. Jian Wushuang became lost in thought. Being a gold-armored ancient god and a militant warrior, he must have much more than he's shown. He clearly has yet to fully use his power. Jian Wushuang came to that conclusion because he knew very well that a gold-armored ancient god could be much more powerful than a divine realm expert. And in addition to that, Jiu You probably had mastered the Star River secret skill to a high level. If he fights with all his power, he can be as powerful as an eternal realm expert. I know that even though he is just a 1-star ancient god now. As for me, I'm only able to battle the weakest eternal realm experts. As those thoughts ran through Jian Wushuang's mind, he suddenly heard Jiu You call his name. That man looked at him and spoke with a smile. I really admire your power. You even haven't awoken your bloodline, and yet you impressed all of us. I believe that once you awaken it, your power will reach a new level. On hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled. It was a pity that he had not awoken his bloodline and was still in the skyscraping realm. However, as long as he could get baptized to awaken his bloodline, he would be able to improve his power by several levels. In fact, I came back for the baptism. I want to awaken my bloodline. Jian Wushuang finally spoke. In that case, then good luck to you. I hope that I can meet you someday in the future. And at that time, let's have a showdown, said Jiu You. Sure. Jian Wushuang smiled again, but he knew that he would not get the chance to meet this man again. He would have to go back to the Firmament territory soon. Jiu You left the 8th tribe without staying any longer while Jian Wushuang remained there. Jian Wushuang, the baptism will take place in 2 months. Until then, you can stay here and wait for it. Eldering said to Jian Wushuang. Okay, thanks. Jian Wushuang nodded. He could afford to wait 2 more months. Time quickly flew by. Finally, the annual baptism arrived. Because the baptism was held every year, there were not many people left in each clan to be baptized. This time, Jian Wushuang only had a dozen companions with him. They were led by Eldering to a huge valley. In the center of the valley was a round pool larger than 10 meters in diameter. The water in it smelled strange. Beside the pool, some people were throwing a large number of leaves and plants into it. Blub, blub. Taking a closer look, they saw that the water was boiling. This pool is where the people of our ancient god clan get baptized. We call it the baptismal pool. Elder Ying's voice was loud and clear. Everyone in our clan has a chance to be baptized in this pool. Most people can awaken their bloodlines and become ancient gods, while a few will fail to do so because their bloodlines are too thin. Please wait here for a moment. After saying all that, Elder Ying walked toward the pool. This is the baptismal pool. The dozen people who were going to be baptized all intently stared at the pool with looks of anticipation. Jian Wushuang was among them. The baptismal pool, something that all the sects in the firmament territory want to obtain. His eyes sparkled. The experts of the sects in the firmament territory all hoped that one day they could be baptized in the pool to awaken their bloodline as an ancient god. That was why every time the Eternal Zone was open, those Eternal Realm experts would crazily try to seize the baptismal pools from the ancient god clan. Luckily, those pools were heavily guarded, so even if those experts joined hands to seize one, there was little prospect of them succeeding. And besides that, even if they were lucky enough to succeed, few of them could become ancient gods all the same. Chapter 734, The Ancient God Baptism. Chapter 734, The Ancient God Baptism. No matter how powerful the experts in the firmament territory are, they are, after all, human beings without any ancient god bloodline. Even if they could get some from an ancient god's essence blood, that would not be enough to enable them to be an ancient god. Maybe some of them do have the greatest luck to become one, but it would most probably be just a copper-armored ancient god, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Right then, Elder Ying went back over to them. Listen, when you go into that pool later, try to absorb as much of the water as you can. In that way, your bloodline is more likely to be awoken and it will have a higher level, she said. Understood. The clansmen waiting to be baptized nodded. Elder Ying then added, All right, the baptismal pools are ready. Now, choose one of them to begin your baptism. She turned to Jian Wushuang and continued, Jian Wushuang, follow me. Jian Wushuang nodded and followed her to one of the baptismal pools. As for the others, they started running to the other pools. Because there were so many such kinds of pools, they could occupy one alone without disturbing anyone else. When they got into the water, there seemed to be a growl from beneath them that rocked their hearts. At the same time, the green steam floating above the surface began flowing into their bodies. They all closed their eyes while absorbing the steam. Elder Ying led Jian Wushuang to a pool that was larger than other ones. This pool is only for you, different from the other pools. It's larger, contains more water, and most of all, there is an ancient god gem at the bottom, she said to him. Ancient god gem. Jian Wushuang was surprised. He had never heard of that before. Then, he listened as the elder explained. The ancient god gems are part of our ancient god's relics, and each one of the gems preserves some energy of the god's flesh. They are very helpful for awakening bloodlines. Up until now, few in our clan have possessed them. Generally, only those who have great potential or high-density bloodlines are qualified to have one. Since you satisfy both conditions, as well as being a militant warrior, I ask them to give you one. Thank you, Elder Ying. Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. You're welcome. But if you really want to thank me, then awaken a bloodline of a gold-armored ancient god, said Elder Ying. Gold-armored ancient god. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and clenched his hands. Now, get in the pool and remember to absorb as much water as you can. In the end, Eldering urged him. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded and looked at the pool. Staring at the steam above the water and the dazzling ripples, he took a deep breath before diving into it like a shooting star. The green steam flowed around the pool like a creeping snake. It feels special. The moment he got into the water, he felt the steam completely surround him. He felt as if he had again become a fetus in his mother's womb as the magic and gentle power flowed into every part of his body. It gave him the pleasurable feeling of being limp and numb. It feels so good, Jian Wushuang said to himself as he tried hard to feel the energy flowing into his body, from his skin to his muscles, meridians, even into his bones. He felt as if his every cell was breathing. He was experiencing a change inside and out. With eyes closed, he was immersed in it. Blub, blub. The water kept boiling. The people in other pools were experiencing the same things as Jian Wushuang, and around the pools, many onlookers from the 8th tribe gathered with Eldering as their leader, their eyes fixed on the men in the water while they chatted with each other. Each of those 13 people has a good bloodline. I think that most of them can succeed in awakening their bloodlines. Of course they all can. The point is what kind of bloodlines they can awaken. If it turns out that they are all only able to become copper-armored ancient gods, that will be quite bad. I don't think that will happen. Judging by the density of their bloodlines, 2 of them will probably become silver-armored ancient gods. Besides, Jian Wushuang is certainly to become a silver-armored ancient god, as well, maybe even a gold-armored ancient god. I agree. I also heard that Eldering has given him an ancient god gem. Let's wait and see how long he can stay in the water. If he can make it to a whole day or even 2 days, he is very likely to become a gold-armored ancient god. The onlookers were full of anticipation. A half-day passed. Howl! A loud roar came out from one of the pools, echoing throughout the valley. The onlookers immediately looked toward the pool, where that sound had come from. There, they saw a young man with a face that was flushed red and veins that were throbbing along with his roars. He is going to transform into an ancient god. The onlookers were familiar with what was happening. A moment later, the young man's body began bulging to over 3 meters in height. His body gleamed with a bronze light, his muscle grew big, and he looked like a normal copper-armored ancient god. A copper-armored ancient god. The onlookers nodded with praise. After transforming into a copper-armored ancient god, the young man gradually restored his calm. A little while later, once he learned how to control the transformation, he turned back into a human being and walked out of the water. The man, however, did not look happy. He was frustrated because he had been the first one to walk out of the pool, which meant that he had absorbed the least energy and awakened the lowest bloodline. Chapter 735, The Metamorphosis. Chapter 735, The Metamorphosis. After the first man had awakened his bloodline, others began to get out of the pools, one after another. In the blink of an eye, a whole day and night had passed. Among the 13 people who had come to be baptized, 12 of them had finished and walked out of the pools, and 2 of them had even become silver-armored demon gods. The only one left in the water was Jian Wushuang. It has been 1 day and night, Eldering murmured, and a sliver of light escaped her eyes. So far, except for Jian Wushuang still being in the water, the longest time any of them stayed in water was 8 hours, and that man became a silver-armored demon god. Therefore, I think Jian Wushuang will awaken his bloodline as a gold-armored demon god. A 2-star ancient god gasped in admiration. As time continued on, Jian Wushuang was still immersed in the water, absorbing energy from it. The more he absorbed, the higher level his bloodline would be. The clansmen waited for him to come out at the edge of the valley. When it had been a whole day and night since Jian Wushuang went into the pool, those men felt quite surprised, and when it had been 2 days, they became thrilled. 2 days and nights, and 2/10 of the energy of the ancient god gem has been consumed, and he is still in the pool. In all the previous cases, all those who had stayed in the pool for 2 days and nights had become gold-armored ancient gods. It seems that he is not going to disappoint us. Gold-armored ancient god. Those onlookers were full of anticipation. That was because as time passed by, there were fewer and fewer gold-armored ancient gods in their clan. Presently, there was a total of less than 100 gold-armored ancient gods in the 10 clans combined. In that big baptismal pool, Jian Wushuang was sitting with his legs crossed with the green energy flowing into his body continuously. At the same time, he was experiencing a change. Sometime later, as the energy stopped flowing into him, he reached his limit. His blood and bones felt thoroughly alive. Excitement and jubilation filled his every cell. Ah! He suddenly let out a cry of pain, which seemed to come from deep inside him. His face twisted and his veins throbbed. He opened his mouth in difficulty and tried to say something, but except for ear-splitting roars, nothing else could be heard from him. His voice resounded loudly throughout the place and alarmed all the creatures there. The clansmen who were waiting for him at the edge of the valley had excited expressions on their faces upon hearing the roars. 7 days and 6 nights. Finally, he is going to reach his limit. He has consumed 3/4 of the energy of the ancient god gem. Those people looked toward Jian Wushuang with eyes full of astonishment and admiration. The more energy one absorbed from the water, the higher the level his bloodline would be. At the thought of Jian Wushuang absorbing energy in the pool for such a long time as 7 days and 6 nights, those clansmen could not help wondering what kind of bloodline Jian Wushuang would awaken. I bet he is going to awaken his bloodline as a gold-armored ancient god. What's more, it should be of the highest level. Few in our clan can be his match in view of their bloodline levels. Let's just wait. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Jian Wushuang. Then, with unbearable pain, Jian Wushuang's body started to bulge, just as the other clansmen had experienced in the baptismal pools. A moment later, his body grew visibly larger to 10 meters in height, and finally to 15 meters. Along with that, his skin gradually turned golden, and his arms and legs grew larger. He looked exactly like a 15-meter-tall, gold-armored ancient god. He is so strong and tall. He became a gold-armored ancient god, 15 meters in height. The onlookers were a bit dumbstruck. For a man in the ancient god clan, how tall he could grow was determined by his bloodline. Normally, the copper-armored ancient gods were about 3 meters tall, while the silver-armored ancient gods were 5 to 6 meters in height. As for the gold-armored ancient gods, most of them were about 10 meters in height. Few were taller than that. Therefore, they were quite surprised by Jian Wushuang's height after he transformed. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Look, what's that?" The others immediately followed his eyes to look at Jian Wushuang's chest, and they were again dumbfounded. On Jian Wushuang's chest, they saw a pattern of a quadrangular star. The pattern represented Jian Wushuang's level as a 1-star ancient god, and what surprised the clansmen so much was the area that the pattern covered. The skin in that area was dark golden, a little different from the other areas of his skin. Dark golden. Dark golden. How is that possible? The clansmen could not believe their eyes. In their minds, each of the 3 kinds of ancient gods had skin that was just a single color. The gold-armored ancient gods were golden-skinned. Why is the skin on his chest different from the other parts of his body? What the hell is this? As the pain inside Jian Wushuang diminished, a sliver of golden light escaped his eyes. With him suddenly looking up, there was a pressing force sweeping away from him. Meanwhile, some images broke into his mind. They were the inherited memories of the ancient gods. The memories were about only one thing: the supreme skill of the ancient god clan, 3 fingers of the ancient god. Chapter 736, Against Nature Twice, the Deification Realm. Chapter 736, Against Nature Twice, the Deification Realm. The ancestor of the ancient god clan was a great ancient god. That god possessed incredible power and was highly gifted. Every time his descendants awoke their bloodlines, some of them might gain a part of his memory. Those lucky ones had to work at the memory by themselves and could not teach others their gains. As those descendants' bloodline got thinner and thinner, only a few of them could gain that ancestor's memory while awaking their bloodlines, and that was true even of the gold-armored ancient gods. Surprisingly, Jian Wushuang gained that memory. 3 fingers of the ancient god. Everything about that skill was now in his mind. It was one of the ancestors' most terrifying and unique skills. Only those clansmen with a high level of bloodline could master it. The 3 fingers meant 3 moves. According to what Jian Wushuang learned from the inherited memory, each move had amazing power. By displaying the first move, one could break realms. By displaying the second move, one could extinguish stars. By displaying the third move, one could shatter the world. Thus, the 3 moves were respectively named barrier-breaking, star-extinguishing, and world-shattering. 3 fingers of the ancient god is a really fierce and terrifying skill. Jian Wushuang was amazed. He believed that later, after he mastered the skill, he would be able to exert extraordinary power. After a quick scan of that memory, he looked down at his body. Is this how I look after I transformed into an ancient god? Staring at his strongly built body, he found it even bigger than that of the gold-armored demon gods, at over 10 meters high. He clenched his hand and could feel a mighty power gather in it. He could tell that this power was much more powerful than that of the sword heart. At the same time, he also noticed the pattern of a quadrangular star on his chest and the dark golden skin it covered. Dark golden? Jian Wushuang was a little confused. He never heard of any ancient god in the ancient god clan who had dark golden skin. However, it did not bother him that much, as it was just a small area. After some time in his transformed body, with a thought of his mind, his body began shrinking into a normal human being's. When he was back into his human body, he immediately felt that his spiritual power had been changed. I broke through a realm. He was not surprised at this. He had known for a long time ago that once those of the ancient god clan accepted their baptism and awoke their bloodlines, they would break through to the level of 1-star ancient god. That level was equal to the level of divine realm experts. Therefore, he had expected that he would reach the divine realm as well after he accepted the baptism, and in view of this, he had purposely adventured longer in order to linger in the skyscraping realm. After all, in the skyscraping realm, he could comprehend Tao and swordsmanship at a great speed, but once he broke through into the divine realm, that speed would be reduced. Now, he found himself in the divine realm. That meant an overall change to his body and an increase of his power, as well as a decrease of his comprehension speed. Actually, even though his talent in comprehension would be weakened, he would still be better at it than others. Now, I've come to the second step of the heaven-defying 4 steps, Deification Realm. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. The 4 steps meant 4 realms: heaven-treading realm, Deification Realm, Everlasting Realm, and Eternal Supremo. Among them, the Deification Realm was equivalent to the divine realm of normal warriors, given that the heavenly creation skill was so unique. After Jian Wushuang transformed into a human being, he did not hurry out of the pool, but stayed in it trying to figure out the difference of the second step. Soon he got the answer. He murmured with a horrified look, "After I'm in the Deification Realm, I can reach the peak of my power without limit." In the heaven-treading realm, he was best at comprehending. In the Deification Realm, he would get the most powerful battle strength. It meant that as long as he was in the realm, he could improve his battle strength without limit. For example, if a divine realm expert could exchange some moves with an eternal realm expert and not get killed, he could be regarded as an exceptional genius among his peers. And if he could kill that expert, he would be regarded as a genius of geniuses. However, very few people in the eternal world could achieve that. The fact was that no matter how powerful a divine realm expert was of his level, he could only beat down some weak and average eternal realm experts. If he could do better than that, he would have broken through the eternal realm. However, the heavenly creation skill Jian Wushuang practiced was meant to break the recognized rules among the common people. There was no limit to his power when he was in the Deification Realm. With some opportunities, he could achieve what others could not. That was to say, he could be as powerful as the top eternal realm experts someday. In that realm, he could improve his power as much as he wanted. Heavenly creation skill is really incredible. Jian Wushuang let out a sigh of surprise. He raised his head and looked around, finding the clansmen all staring at him with dumbfounded looks. Jian Wushuang smiled at them, walked out the baptismal pool, and came up to them. Chapter 737, Ancient God Palace. Chapter 737, Ancient God Palace. Eldering and other brothers, sorry to keep you waiting. Jian Wushuang apologized to them. Those who were waiting for him all stared at him with a strange look, especially Eldering. Her eyes flickered when she observed Jian Wushuang. His bloodline carries a strong oppressive force, a force much stronger than those of the other gold-armored ancient gods. The others looked a bit terrified while staring at Jian Wushuang. Once the people of the ancient god clan awoke their bloodline, it would emit an oppressive force from them, and the force of a gold-armored ancient god would be much stronger than that of a silver-armored ancient god. Therefore, even if the latter was stronger than the former, he would still be in awe of him because his bloodline was of lower level. Those clansmen had been waiting for Jian Wushuang for so long that the first time he awoke his bloodline, they immediately felt it and were shocked. The oppressive force they felt from him was fiercer than what they felt from other gold-armored ancient gods. It has been rather long since a bloodline of such high level as yours has awoken, Eldering said to Jian Wushuang with her eyes sparkling. After a long silence, she let out a sigh of relief and turned to her clansmen. The baptism is ended, and all of you can go back now. Yes, Eldering. The clansmen all headed back after shooting Jian Wushuang a glance. Soon, there was only Jian Wushuang with Eldering. Jian Wushuang, I want to show you something. Follow me. She finally spoke again. Yes, Eldering. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang followed her. They left the valley, and then the clan. Eternal Zone was a vast land. The ancient god clan and the wild beasts each controlled half of it. Where the two territories met was the holy place of the ancient god clan, and the place had been closed since the clan lost the ancestors' trace. During those long years, no one had gotten in or out of the place. Elder Ing led Jian Wushuang to a giant mountain near the holy place, and there was a wide path leading to its peak. Walking along the path, Jian Wushuang quickly reached the peak. What's this? He was immediately attracted by a scene in front of him. It was a group of ancient and huge palaces. Between him and the palaces was a giant stone on which 3 words were engraved. Ancient God Palace. Ancient God Palace. Jian Wushuang frowned. He had been in the Eternal Zone for more than 80 years, and yet he had never heard of the palace before. Eldering, what are those palaces? Ancient God Palace is the core place of our clan, and also a place where our top experts are gathered. Eldering started explaining. This palace contains the most important and ancient 3 secret skills of our clan. Those skills are our foundation. There are over 1 million people in our 10 tribes, and only the top ones or the gold-armored ancient gods can enter this palace to study the 3 skills. The 3 secret skills? Jian Wushuang was excited. Back when he was studying the Star River secret skill, Changfeng had told him that there were 2 other secret skills in their clan apart from the one he was working on. At that time, he had only been able to learn the first 11 levels of the Star River secret skill, and was not up to the rest of the levels and the other 2 secret skills. Changfeng had also told him that only gold-armored ancient gods could practice those skills. However, now from Elder Ying's words, he finally knew that not only gold-armored ancient gods, but also top experts could practice them. Jian Wushuang. Eldering looked towards him and spoke again. You have awoken a strong bloodline and even have dark golden skin on your chest. That's why I brought you here. Let me show you in. Thanks, Eldering. Jian Wushuang nodded. He could not wait to see the other levels of the Star River secret skill and the other 2 secret skills with his own eyes. Following Eldering, he entered the palace, and in the hallway he saw some people with terrifying power. The first person he caught sight of was a bald man. The man saw him as well and grinned at him, which, however, made his hair stand on end. He could tell that the man was powerful enough to kill him with 1 strike. Besides the man, the others he saw along the way all made him feel fear. Those people are as powerful as 2-star ancient gods, and their battle strength have to be amazingly strong, he thought. In fact, he had met many Eternal Realm experts in the Firmament territory before, and those experts in the 3 magnates and the top sects numbered 100. Nevertheless, except for his master Xian Yi, none of them terrified him as much as these men he saw here. He even suspected that each expert in that palace could kill a group of Eternal Realm experts outside by themselves. Is this the main power of the ancient god clan? Jian Wushuang was stunned inside. Though he had seen some 2-star ancient gods in the 10 tribes earlier, he had not been able to set eyes on the really powerful ones until this moment, for these experts remained in the palace all the time. Chapter 738, Imperial Kinsmen. Chapter 738, Imperial Kinsmen. Following Eldering, Jian Wushuang soon arrived at the core place of the palace, a huge black pavilion. On the stairs in front of him, he saw a weathered elder sit with his legs crossed and eyes closed. If someone observed the elder just by looking, he would think that this man was not breathing and was dead, but if he closed his eyes and tried hard to feel the elder's aura, he would know that the elder was alive. Eldering bowed to the elder respectfully. The elder heard the voice and opened his eyes. As the elder's eyes fell on Jian Wushuang, the latter immediately felt his mind go blank. For a moment, Jian Wushuang felt as if he was frozen inside out. What's wrong with me? He could not help being afraid. 3-star ancient god. This elder must be a 3-star ancient god, as powerful as a Tao master. Jian Wushuang's eyes were widely opened. This was the first time that he had seen such a supreme expert. Although the elder was an ancient god, not a human being, Jian Wushuang knew that the elder was no weaker than a human Tao master and might be even stronger. He was so thrilled that such a powerful god was now sitting before his eyes. How could this boy's bloodline be even stronger than mine? The elder was surprised after staring at Jian Wushuang, and he immediately asked, "Boy, who are you?" He looked impassive, his piercing eyes fixed on Jian Wushuang, as if he wanted to see through him. Being watched by such a pair of intense eyes, Jian Wushuang felt timid, but he was experienced, so he managed to remain calm while replying, "I'm Jian Wushuang." Jian Wushuang. On hearing the answer, the elder narrowed his eyes. "Elder E, this boy is a descendant of militant warriors. A few days ago, he accepted a baptism in the baptismal pool with our clansmen and didn't get out until 7 days and 6 nights later." Elder Ing chimed in. 7 days and 6 nights? Elder G had a surprised look on his face upon hearing the words. Normally, staying in the baptismal pool for 2 days and 2 nights would be enough to awake the bloodline of a gold-armored ancient god. At that moment, Elder Ing continued, "More than that, the gold-armored ancient god he transformed into was about 15 meters tall and had dark gold skin on his chest while the skin of other parts was pure gold." Dark gold. On hearing this, Elder E suddenly rose up to his feet and watched Jian Wushuang closely while shouting, "You just said that the gold-armored ancient god this boy transformed into was about 15 meters tall and had dark gold skin on his chest." "Yes." Elder Ing nodded. Elder E was vacant-eyed with astonishment, murmuring, "Dark gold, ancient god, Imperial bloodline." Imperial bloodline? When Elder Ing heard the 2 words, she was dumbfounded. Jian Wushuang was, however, confused. What does Imperial bloodline mean? Is he talking about me? There are only copper-armored ancient gods, silver-armored ancient gods, and gold-armored ancient gods, aren't there? Lost in confusion, Jian Wushuang suddenly heard Elder E speak to him. "Jian Wushuang, transform into an ancient god now." "Yes, Elder." Jian Wushuang nodded. There was a burst of bloodline power inside Jian Wushuang, unleashed with his will, and his body began to bulge. In just a moment, he had become a gold-armored ancient god about 15 meters tall, and surely the skin on his chest was dark gold. "It's indeed dark gold." Elder E stared at Jian Wushuang for a good while. His bloodline is so pure, with an overpowering oppressing force. Even I shiver under it. He does have an imperial bloodline. Though only being a small part, those with imperial bloodline are nobler than us. So many years have passed, and finally, we have another man with an imperial bloodline in our clan. Ha! Elder E laughed loudly with joy and excitement. Jian Wushuang and Elder Ing were puzzled at the sudden laughter. Elder Ing was not among those seniors of the clan, thus she did not know some secrets about the clan, such as the imperial bloodline. A noble with imperial bloodline has appeared again. Why are you old guys still staying inside? Elder E suddenly turned back and shouted at the palace. His voice echoed throughout the whole place. However, only a few people in the palace could hear it. Those people were the ones who had lived for a really long time in the clan. Imperial bloodline, the direct descendant of His Majesty, has finally appeared. As another loud voice echoed from the underground, the ground where Jian Wushuang stood on started shaking wildly. What's going on? Jian Wushuang was startled and looked around. Seeing the sudden change, the clansmen inside the palace were also amazed. Right then, the ground was cracked open from its center, and from inside stretched out a huge palm. Then a giant figure climbed out, who tore the ground apart like tearing a coffin that buried him. It was a gold-armored ancient god dozens of meters tall, gleaming with golden light. The god stood towering like a giant mountain, stunning the onlookers just based on visual impact. How tall and strong it is! Jian Wushuang was amazed. It is a human being. The giant figure stretched himself after turning up, making a thundering sound. The next moment, the figure began shrinking and finally turned into a middle-aged man about 2 meters tall, who rushed towards the black pavilion, approaching Jian Wushuang. Chapter 739, Secret. Chapter 739, Secret. There was a towering mountain outside the ancient god palace. It existed for a long, long time in the Eternal Zone. The clansmen from the ancient god clan occasionally passed by this mountain when they went hunting. At this moment, Imperial bloodline. The resonant sound echoed through the mountain, causing it to convulse. Crack! A huge crack suddenly appeared on the mountain wall, followed by the mountain splitting in two as if it had been parted by someone. In the blink of an eye, a 1,000-foot-tall, gold-armored ancient god stepped out of the mountain. At the same time, a giant figure flew out of the lake in the Eternal Zone. A stone-faced young man walked out of a mansion. In the depths of the boundless wasteland, a gold-armored ancient god dashed forward at amazing speed while ignoring the beasts on his way. The weathered elder, Elder E, had sent out the messages in a special way. Those old monsters who had been living in seclusion all came out. Shortly after, they all appeared in front of a black pavilion in the ancient god palace and fixed their eyes on Jian Wushuang, who was also looking at these ancient gods in shock. Along with Elder E, the other 8 ancient gods all had human appearances. Regardless of their gender or age, they all had one thing in common. They were all 3-star ancient gods. 9 3-star ancient gods. Jian Wushuang gasped. A 2-star ancient god was comparable to a Dao master. There were 4 Dao masters in the entire firmament territory, the masters of the 3 magnates and the sect master of the ancient sect. Although the ancient sect had another 3 Dao masters, they had already left the firmament territory. The 9 ancient gods were looking at Jian Wushuang in admiration. Imperial bloodline. He really has the Imperial bloodline. Although it's just a small part of the Imperial bloodline, that's enough. Haha, many years have passed. We finally have an Imperial bloodline clansman, but he is not strong. He has just awakened his bloodline, so it's natural that he is still weak. It won't take long for him to meet the requirement. Things are getting better. The 9 3-star ancient gods were in a heated discussion, looking surprised and delighted. Everyone, the other 3-star ancient gods, stopped talking and nodded slightly after hearing Elder Yi's voice. Okay, since you don't have any questions, then I'll explain it to the young boy. Elder Yi said. Okay, then we'll all go to make some preparations. The other 8 3-star ancient gods could not help casting a fervent glance at Jian Wushuang before they left. Jian Wushuang felt that it was very strange. Boy, your name is Jian Wushuang, right? Elder Yi looked over at the boy with a kind expression, then said, I guess you're very confused now, right? Right. Jian Wushuang nodded unconsciously. What had happened just now puzzled him, as well as Granny Ying. They had no idea about the Imperial bloodline, so it was not clear to them why the 3-star ancient gods were over the moon after receiving the news that Jian Wushuang had a part of the Imperial bloodline. It's normal that you're confused about it. After all, in the entire clan, only we old guys know the secret. Elder Yi sighed and started to explain. As we all know, our ancestor was an ancient god who was strong enough to destroy the world. And actually, it's inappropriate to call him the ancient god. He is our king. King. Jian Wushuang was surprised. Right, he was a dark gold ancient god, the highest level, while the other ancient gods were his subordinates, who served him and followed his orders. Elder Yi continued, We're not his descendants, but his subordinates' descendants. Many years ago, the king suddenly disappeared, and the holy place closed. So many of his subordinates there became isolated from us. Over the past years, we've tried to enter the holy place. As long as we're able to enter the holy place, we can find out the reason why the king was missing and why the holy place was closed. But the formation there was too powerful, and even though all the 3-star ancient gods worked together, we were still unable to break it. It's impossible to enter it with strength alone, so we have to turn to people who possess the Imperial bloodline. It's a pity that our king had no lineal descendants. We've lived in this world for a long, long time. Our bloodline has become weaker and weaker, let alone have we fostered the Imperial bloodline. So we've all felt hopeless, but now you've given us a glimmer of hope. Because you have part of the Imperial bloodline. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang finally understood. The Imperial bloodline could help them unseal the holy place so that they could solve the riddles, which was of the greatest importance to the ancient god clan. Elder He, you want me to break the seal of the holy place? Jian Wushuang asked. Right. Elder He nodded. But you've just awakened your bloodline, so you're too weak to break the seal. You need some time to grow up. When you become a 2-star ancient god, you might be able to succeed. Chapter 740. The 3 Secret Skills of the Ancient God Clan. Chapter 740. The 3 Secret Skills of the Ancient God Clan. 2-star ancient god. Jian Wushuang wore a wry smile. He had just awakened the bloodline and become a 1-star ancient god, so he was far from being a 2-star ancient god. Little Ing. Elder Yi addressed Granny Ing. Granny Ing was a highly respected ancient god in the 8th tribe, but in front of Elder Yi, she became Little Ing. Obviously, Elder Yi had lived longer than Granny Ing. You brought the boy here for the 3 secret skills, right? Elder Yi asked. Granny Ing nodded, saying, That's right. The 3 secret skills are the greatest foundation for our clan. Jian Wushuang, go and do some good cultivation. Elder Yi responded while waving his hand. Then the gate of the Black Pavilion opened. Jian Wushuang, go for it, Granny Ing said. Jian Wushuang walked inside, without hesitation. Inside, there was an open space with 3 stone tablets in the center. Each of the stone tablets was 30 feet tall, black, and made from some special ore. Many small, tightly packed characters were carved on them. Each of the stone tablets had a secret skill recorded onto them. Jian Wushuang went over to the first stone tablet engraved with the Scarlet Eye secret skill. The Scarlet Eye secret skill helps you see through reality and illusions. If someone reaches its limit, everything will be exposed to him under the Scarlet Eye. Jian Wushuang was shocked by its brief introduction. See through reality and illusions. Everything will be exposed to him under the Scarlet Eye. This was a great secret skill. Jian Wushuang continued and looked at the second secret skill. The 3 secret skills were Scarlet Eye, Star River, and Mind Controlling. The Scarlet Eye secret skill was rare. The last 2 secret skills were used for attacking. He had mastered the first 3 levels of the Star River secret skill and improved his offensive power by 9 times. He had only seen the manuals of the first 11 levels of the Star River secret skill when he was in the 8th tribe. But now, faced with the complete manual of the Star River secret skill, Jian Wushuang was rocked. 34 levels. Jian Wushuang widened his eyes, staring at the second stone tablet. The Star River secret skill actually had 34 levels. What he had seen in the 8th tribe was less than 1/3 of the complete secret skill. Each level of the Star River secret skill is able to improve my offensive power by 3 times. Now I've just reached level 3, so my offensive power became 9 times greater than before. If I reach level 11, my offensive power will improve by 33 times. However, level 11 is not the limit. If I reach level 34, my offensive power will gain a 100-fold increase. 100-fold increase. 100-fold offensive power. The secret skills in the Firmament territory often helped improve offensive power by 10 times at the most. For human warriors, 10 times was their limit. When he saw the first 11 levels of the Star River secret skill, Jian Wushuang was totally stupefied. And now he was even more shocked. It can actually help me obtain a 100-fold offensive power. This, Jian Wushuang, was at a loss for words. Aided by the secret skill, the Firmament territory experts were only able to improve their offensive power by, at most, 10 times, while the ancient gods could get a 100-fold power increase if they reached the peak of the Star River secret skill. Powerful. Terrifying. This was the formidable ancient god clan. The mind-controlling secret skill was targeted at the opponent's consciousness and soul. If someone reached the elementary level, he was capable of attacking one's consciousness. Unlike the 18 levels of hell, which could pose a threat to one's consciousness and stop his consciousness for a short moment, the mind-controlling secret skill was used to attack one's consciousness and make him tingle or confused. If someone were to reach the supreme level, he would be able to attack one's soul, which was strange and terrifying. Each of the secret skills is amazing. Jian Wushuang could not hold back his praise. The demon gods were already more powerful. Now, aided by the 3 secret skills, they would be invincible. Clansmen who have awakened the demon god bloodline are qualified to practice the 3 secret skills. The better bloodline a demon god possesses, the higher level he will reach. I'm a gold-armored ancient god and have a part of the Imperial bloodline, so I'm able to cultivate it, but I don't know how far I can go, Jian Wushuang murmured. Then he sat down with his legs crossed as he started to meditate on the Scarlet Eye secret skill, which helped see through reality and illusions. As Jian Wushuang was meditating on the secret skill, Granny Ing was still standing outside with respect. Each of our 3 secret skills is profound. Although the boy has a part of the Imperial bloodline, it's impossible for him to master all of them in a short period of time. Little Ing, there's no need to wait here. Go back to the tribe. And remember, don't talk to anyone about the boy's Imperial bloodline and our clan's secret. Okay. Granny Ing nodded and then left. Elder E sat cross-legged in front of the black pavilion. The boy has a part of the Imperial bloodline, so it's easy for him to master the River Star secret skill. But to practice the last 2 skills requires a superior understanding. I wonder how long he will meet the requirement for the 2 skills, Elder E said quietly. Then he closed his eyes. Chapter 741, Dedicated Meditation. Chapter 741, Dedicated Meditation. Jian Wushuang was quietly meditating on the secret skill in front of the 3 stone tablets. The Star River secret skill consisted of 34 levels. It was easy to reach the elementary levels. Even the clansmen who had not awakened the bloodline were able to master level 1 or level 2. However, the further they went, the harder it became. In the entire clan, few had been able to reach level 20. As for the Scarlet Eye secret skill and the mind-controlling secret skill, it was difficult for the ancient gods to meet the requirements. Some powerful clansmen, and even some gold-armored ancient gods, would spend 10 years or even 100 years meditating on the 2 skills if they wanted to reach level 1. Jian Wushuang possessed the Imperial bloodline. If he had remained a skyscraping realm expert who had the highest understanding, it would have been easier for him to meditate on the 2 skills, but now he was a divine realm expert whose understanding was weaker. It took him 5 years to start getting the hang of the Scarlet Eye secret skill. Then he spent 8 years reaching the elementary levels of the mind-controlling secret skill. and as for the Star River secret skill, it only took him half a month to master level 10. In the ancient god clan, 1-star ancient gods were only able to reach level 10 of the Star River secret skill. After keeping the 3 secret skills manuals in his mind, Jian Wushuang decided to leave. Jian Wushuang. The moment he stepped out of the black pavilion, Jian Wushuang immediately saw Elder Yi sitting on the ground. Elder Yi. Jian Wushuang bowed to the elder. "How's it going with the 3 secret skills?" Elder Yi asked. "Not bad. I've reached level 10 of the Star River secret skill and elementary levels of the other 2 skills," Jian Wushuang replied, honestly. "What? So fast?" Elder Yi was astonished, but soon calmed himself. Then he said with a smile, "You're worthy of possessing the Imperial bloodline. Your understanding is excellent." Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled. But actually, he was not satisfied with his achievements. His talents in comprehension became weaker than before after he reached the Deification realm. If he had been in the skyscraping realm, he would have only spent 3 years on the 2 last secret skills. As for how to use the 3 skills, you can ask some ancient gods in the ancient god palace. They'll help you, Elder Yi added. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded. He had planned to stay in the ancient god palace. "I have lived in the Eternal Zone for more than 90 years. In 7 years, this zone will open again. Then I'll leave for the Firmament territory. So I can stay in the ancient god palace to enhance my strength until then." Jian Wushuang made up his mind. He would live in the ancient god palace for 7 years. There were numerous powerful clansmen in the ancient god palace. Although Jian Wushuang was unable to fight against them, he was raring to go. The clansmen of the ancient god clan were born militant, as was Jian Wushuang. Therefore, Jian Wushuang started to challenge his clansmen. Time flew by in the Eternal Zone. During that period of time, he had fought many clansmen in the ancient god palace. Although he rarely won the fights, Jian Wushuang had never lost heart and kept challenging more clansmen. He also gained a lot from his abject failures. 7 years passed by. On the top floor of a towering pagoda, Jian Wushuang quietly sat cross-legged under an ancient copper bell, with his eyes closed and a faint smile on his face. He suddenly shook, and a surge of overwhelming aura radiated out. Star River secret skill, level 11, is complete. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes, which shone with excitement. He had reached level 10 7 years ago and improved his offensive power by 30 times. He had been practicing the Star River secret skill over the past 7 years. Now he finally made it to level 11 and gained another 3-fold increase. The Star River secret skill was restricted to ancient god's realm. When Jian Wushuang was a skyscraping realm expert before he had awakened his bloodline, he was capable of mastering the first 3 levels of this skill. As for his clansmen, who had not become 1-star ancient gods, they could reach level 3 at the most. Level 10 of the Star River secret skill would be the limit for the 1-star ancient gods. The strongest 1-star ancient gods, even the gold-armored ancient gods, could only reach level 10. No one had made it to level 11. However, Jian Wushuang succeeded. This was the particularity of the Deification realm. His strength was limitless in that realm. Therefore, he was able to reach level 11. He would progress to level 12 or 13, as he had great potential. Jian Wushuang. A bold voice was heard before a bald man glided in from afar. Jian Wushuang addressed him. "Gu Heng." The bald man was named Gu Heng, who was a powerful 2-star ancient god. Although he was a silver-armored ancient god, few gold-armored ancient gods could match him. Jian Wushuang had sparred with him more than once, but he had suffered a crushing defeat every time. Time is up. Elder Yi asked me to tell you that the outsiders are about to arrive, Gu Heng said. Finally, it's time for me to show up. Jian Wushuang raised his head, his eyes shining with killing intent. Chapter 742, 100 Years Arrives. Chapter 742, 100 Years Arrives. Elder Yi. Jian Wushuang bowed to the elder in front of the black pavilion. Elder Yi looked at the boy with a faint smile while asking, "Are you ready to fight the outsiders?" "Yes, I am." Jian Wushuang nodded. "Although they don't have much strength, they have superb skills. You should go to fight them, but you have to be careful because the outsiders are interested in our essence blood, so it will be an all-out fight if you do encounter them." "Okay." Jian Wushuang nodded again. As a militant warrior, you have experienced such fights many times before, so I won't need to remind you more about it. Here's something for you. Elder Yi waved his hand and threw a wilted yellow leaf to the boy. Jian Wushuang received it and immediately felt the terrifying power contained within it. "Elder Yi, what is it?" Jian Wushuang asked with a confused look. "This leaf can save your life. Your Imperial bloodline is important to us, so I don't dare to risk your life." Elder Yi responded with a faint smile. "This leaf contains my finger power. If you're in danger, just tear it." "Thank you, Elder Yi." Jian Wushuang expressed his appreciation with a flicker of delight in his heart. It was clear to him that Elder Yi was really a 3-star ancient god, even superior to a human Tao master, so the power of his finger would be a brilliant weapon. "I've ordered Gu Heng to go with you. If you have any problem, just ask him." Elder Yi waved his hand. Jian Wushuang nodded and then left. Gu Heng had been waiting outside of the ancient god palace. Seeing Jian Wushuang approaching, Gu Heng stepped forward and said with a smile, "Jian Wushuang, we'll work together this time." Jian Wushuang smiled and asked, "Gu Heng, have you fought an outsider?" "Of course I have," Gu Heng replied. "The outsiders invade our homeland every 100 years, so our clan arranges some clansmen to fight them. Aside from ordinary 2-star ancient gods from the 10 big tribes, our clan sometimes dispatches 1 or 2 clansmen from the ancient god palace. I have fought the outsiders 3 times, so this is my 4th crusade." "Oh, really?" Jian Wushuang understood. "Right, you haven't brawled with the outsides, have you? Their strength is poor, but they have amazing skills." Gu Heng started to talk about the outsiders. Jian Wushuang listened attentively, but he felt inwardly aggrieved, because after all, he also came from the outside world and could be regarded as an outsider. Therefore, he had a better understanding of the skills of the human experts than Gu Heng did. Shortly after, they arrived at the great mountains, which stretched out for thousands of miles. They were called the Tianqi Mountains. Due to their years of experience, the clansmen from the ancient god clan knew that the outsiders would appear at any corner of the mountains, so they waited there. Hundreds of 2-star ancient gods were standing close by in the void. They all came from the 10 tribes. Aside from a few powerful ones, most of them were mediocre. Gu Xiu, who had saved Jian Wushuang once, was considered the strongest among the group of 2-star ancient gods. At this point, they gathered in 2s and 3s and were chatting with each other. "I heard that the ancient god palace will send someone here. As we all know, only gold-armored ancient gods or real supreme clansmen are qualified to enter the ancient god palace, so every one of them is far superior to us. I wonder which one will come here." The 2-star ancient gods were looking forward to it. The ancient god clan paid more attention to strength and bloodline. Many clansmen dreamed of having access to the ancient god palace. At this point, 2 figures glided over from afar. Finally, two masters are coming. The two-star ancient gods widen their eyes. Those two figures quickly appeared in front of them. The two-star ancient gods were a bit surprised when they saw the bald man. Gu Heng, Master Gu Heng. Wow, Master Gu Heng came here. Gu Heng will personally fight the outsiders. Do they have any chance to survive? The two-star ancient gods obviously knew about Gu Heng's strength, so they were shocked. However, the moment they noticed the young man beside Gu Heng, they all wore odd expressions on their faces. A one-star ancient god. Are you kidding me? He definitely came to the wrong place. A one-star ancient god should go to the outer layer and fight with those so-called divine realm experts. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang gave them a wry smile, as he had foreseen that they would have such a reaction. After all, he was only a one-star ancient god. Even though he came from the ancient god palace, his level did not convince them. Jian Wushuang, it seems that you'll have to prove yourself. Gu Heng teased him. Jian Wushuang shrugged his shoulders with resignation. Okay, listen up, this is Jian Wushuang. Although he is just a one-star ancient god, his strength is far superior to most of ours. Gu Heng introduced him in a resonant voice. As for this fight with the outsiders, we will be your commanders, so you have to follow our orders over the next 10 days. Understand? Understood, chorused the two-star ancient gods. Although they responded in a loud voice, Jian Wushuang could tell that they still doubted his strength from their unnatural expressions.